We'll start the meeting, members, and again, could I remind members and those in the public gallery to switch off mobile phones as they may interfere with the system, and the meeting will be on camera. Could I also remind members of the obligation to declare any relevant financial or other interests in relation to today's business, and to ensure that the volume on all tablet devices is off. The quickest way to do this is to press function and F8. Could I question, are there any apologies?
We're not aware of any, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We have the draft minutes of the meeting of the 16th of October. They're at page 5. Could I seek your agreement that the minutes are an accurate record of the meeting?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. The first item of business this morning is the briefing from the Ulster Orchestra, and we're all very conscious and indeed very concerned about the position of the orchestra. So if I could refer members to the clerk's memo at page 11, the Ulster Orchestra briefing paper at page 13, and an email in the table pack from Elizabeth Clark. If we bring the folks from the orchestra.
Okay.
Here, your check. It's done. That's right.
Could I give a welcome to Professor Sir George Bain, who's the Executive Chairman of the Ulster Orchestra, Trevor Green, Special Executive, Oveen Sands, the Head of Finance and Operations, and Veronica Morris, who's the Head of Executive Relations. Thank you indeed for coming in this morning. We're appreciative of the opportunity to hear from yourselves about the current situation and to assure you of our continued interest and concern about this. So we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you very much for inviting us. And particularly, I understand you had a late evening last night, so it's particularly good that you're here to hear what we have to say this morning. Try to put it on one page. I gather the page was circulated in advance with your other papers, so I won't labor it. Really, three headings: what's the problem, what's the solution, and why we would like your support to the solution. The problem is a very simple one. It's one that you must be hearing from numerous quarters besides the Ulster Orchestra, namely that we are in grave financial difficulties. The reason we are in grave financial difficulties, again, quite simple. Our two main income streams are, like most arts organizations, on the one hand from the Arts Council of Northern Ireland, and secondly, the BBC pays us, partly the BBC Northern Ireland, partly Radio 3, for the music that we supply to them. And over the last 4 years, the funding from both those sources has declined by 28%, which is roughly £1 million in real terms. And for an organization that was underfunded, under-resourced, the staff have not had a pay rise since 2008, either the players or the staff. And the orchestra has not been able to tour for 10 years. This is long before the cuts came. It simply means we're not viable. And to make a final point before what could be the solution, we hold our AGM usually in September, and like most organizations, we present our annual accounts at the AGM. If we had done that this September, we would have had the auditors informing us that we would have to, as directors, qualify the accounts. In other words, you're supposed to be able to stand on your tiptoes, look ahead 12 months and say, yes, the directors believe that we can solvently trade for the next 12 months. We would not have been able to do that. Hence, we have postponed the AGM until the 15th of December, and we hope to perhaps work out a solution, a salvation before then. Well, what is the solution? Part of it, we think, stems from Belfast City Council. The Ulster Hall in particular, and to a lesser extent, the Waterfront Hall, is where we perform most of our concert activity. And when the Ulster Hall was refurbished at a cost of over $8 million in 2006-07, the Arts Council and DECAL put in about a third of the funding, about $2.8 million of the total. And they did so on the grounds that the Ulster Hall should be the permanent home of the Ulster Orchestra. And indeed, the Ulster Orchestra should be the anchor tenant, in effect, and other people wishing to use the hall would be fitted around the needs of the orchestra. That seems to have got lost a bit. In fact, the then Minister of Culture actually said that the rent should be free. That didn't get into the agreement. And over time, it's been, I think, largely forgotten, with the result that Belfast City Council gives us $150,000 a year in round figures. In round figures, we give them $160,000 back for using the hall, which I think everyone has agreed is a bit of a bureaucratic nonsense. It's also a financial nonsense because we actually have to pay VAT on the transaction. So the first part is that we should have a rent-free holiday. And at the Strategic Policy and Resources Committee of Belfast City Council on Friday of last week, these proposals were considered, and this, I gather, was generally well received. It's now going forward to Council, and then it'll go forward to another committee further down the road. But so far, this proposal, I think, is getting a fair wind. The second part of it, the second bullet there, is that we've asked Belfast City Council, in effect, for a bridging loan of $500,000. We've sent a letter of comfort. It could be that, but basically it boils down to £500,000, which is what we need to sign off the accounts. It would clear the deficit at the end of March 15, the end of our financial year. And this is a more difficult one. The council is saying, not unreasonably, I think, listen, this is the Ulster Orchestra. It serves the whole province. Why should it only be the City Council that bails you out? I don't actually, I'm not often stuck for an answer, but I'm stuck for an answer on that one. Yes, indeed. Why should it only be Belfast City Council? And hence, we do need, I think, other support if the council is going to step up to the plate on this. And the most obvious source of that, in our view, would be DECAL, who might share that burden. The third part of the solution rests on ourselves, and it's why we've asked Trevor to join us to help us out. Basically, the operating model of the Ulster Orchestra was viable as long as the public purse was prepared to fund roughly $1.5 million more per year. Those days have gone, if not forever, certainly for the foreseeable future. And hence, part of the solution of our salvation rests in our own hands. We have to come up with a different operating model. And Trevor Green, hugely experienced orchestral manager, having managed orchestras in Scotland, in England, for the BBC, and also in Australia, and has actually introduced new models for other orchestras, is helping us do that. Fourth and finally, or penultimately, is DECAL again. We would be looking, hopefully, towards the end of the financial year, when there may well, as there often is, an underspend, be looking for some support for redundancy, if that's necessary, and even if it isn't, for an early retirement scheme. And we can come back to that as well. Finally, whatever we come up with, and even if Trevor, or we with Trevor's help, are able to design a new operating model, we have to ask the Arts Council to make sure that there's enough money to finance it. So the solution has many parts, many actors. I suppose here this morning, the bit that is most relevant to yourselves is the bit that concerns what DECAL or the executive through DECAL might do. Finally, and I'll be brief, why support us? Well, I won't even mention the cultural benefits. I think they're well known. The social benefits aren't so well known, and perhaps this is, well, never mind, perhaps it's partly our fault, at least that they're not as well known. I think the Ulster Orchestra is a bit like the proverbial iceberg. The bit that people see are the concerts when the conductor is in his tails or whatever on a Friday night in the Ulster Hall or the Waterfront Hall conducting. But there's a huge amount below the waterline which involves educational work. Some 25,000 young people each year are the beneficiaries of musical education from the players of the orchestra, or indeed, as some of you will be aware, because these activities have occurred in your constituencies, where we have been using the orchestra as an instrument for trying to mitigate multiple social deprivation in various parts of Belfast. Perhaps the economic one, perhaps because I was trained as an economist, I often think that money talks loudest. Perhaps it's not the most important thing, but at the moment it is. And the orchestra has a multiplier, a concept you're well familiar with, of £2.62 for every pound of Arts Council funding that it receives. And this produces a net cash flow of about $3 million a year. In other words, if you deduct the Arts Council grant, it's about $3 million. And if you put that forward at a reasonable discount rate, you end up with a sum of about $50 million over 25 years. The orchestra is a significant economic contributor to Belfast and indeed more generally to Northern Ireland. And the final point is the last bullet. It's an understatement because although all of the arts organizations in Northern Ireland are extremely important, and indeed I've been before many of you before when we were raising money for the Lyric Theatre, I think the orchestra is different in this sense that it gives you, i.e. Belfast, Northern Ireland, international reach. We're broadcasting on Radio 3, all around the world, etc. And I think by doing that, it increases the international reach, it increases the world standing, and indeed, again, as all of you are only too well aware, we are making great steps here to try and build up the cultural tourism product, and also to grow industries such as the movie making, TV, etc. production. And we are involved in that. We're trying to become more involved. We would be contributing even more on the economic front. But I will leave it there.
Okay, thank you indeed, Sir George. We appreciate there the clarity of the way in which you set that out, and also the short brief which sets out the position also very clearly. Could I just clarify one point that you mentioned? You spoke about, it refers in the document to emergency funding, and you used the term bridging loan.
Well, yes, I wish I'd had the wit to think of bridging loan, or bridging funding, I should have said, not
right,
bridging
okay,
loan.
I just wanted to just clarify that.
Funding, yes, we're not going to pay it back.
No. Just to get a clarification, that was all. Thank you.
It's to give us a
breathing
spell
space, absolutely.
to March. Sorry.
Yes. Thank you. The first question is William Humphrey.
Thanks, Chair.
Sorry, before you start there, could I just say to members, if we keep ourselves strictly to questioning, and then at the very end, when they've left, we can discuss then what actions we want to take, rather than interspersing proposals for actions into the midst of the conversation.
Thanks. Good morning, and thanks
for the
presentation. First of all, can I say from our party's perspective, we are hugely sympathetic to your plight, and I also, in terms of local involvement, I've been aware that you've been working with local schools in North Belfast. Indeed, the orchestra has been practising in Spectrum, so I welcome all of that outreach. But can I ask you, in relation to the Arts Council, you talk here about the reduction from the Arts Council and BBC payments, both BBC Northern Ireland and Radio 3. What, in real terms, are the cuts from the Arts Council you're having to endure?
Since March 2013, we've basically had 400,000 drop in income, plus we have another 75,000 in-year funding cut. That is actual. So you're talking nearly 600, 700,000 in terms of real terms. So that's what we're having to find in terms of additional income. And that's a very short space of time to lose that amount of income from, March 13. It's a significant amount of income to find and practically impossible.
And
that's not including what the BBC have reduced.
Yes,
it's,
I'll come to them. But
okay.
Can I just ask you, in terms of those reductions, which are huge and very difficult to replace that level of funding in such a short period of time, have you asked the Minister why? Because we are facing huge cuts as we go down in terms of budgetary problems going in, but, to be honest, they do not stretch back to 2011.
Well, I think perhaps I could answer this and make it quite clear that we are not complaining about the Arts Council or the BBC. Obviously, Arts Council funding has been, which is not huge, relatively speaking, to other parts of the United Kingdom and indeed these islands to begin with. But they actually treat us quite generously. We get before the cuts, we were getting in round figures 20% of the total Arts Council budget, roughly 2 out of 10 million. And secondly, roughly about 80% of the music budget. So the problem, I think, is not to direct criticism at the Arts Council, or indeed the BBC, which, as you well know, Mr. Humphreys, is also suffering cuts. Everybody's suffering cuts. They just cascade down. The government gets cuts. Departments get cuts. The quangos, like the Arts Council, get cuts, and so on. And it just comes down. I think the Arts Council actually treats us generously. In fact, I think some other arts organisations would argue they treat us too generously, but they wouldn't they? But
to be fair, in my question, there was no implied or overt criticism of the Arts Council. I was simply asking, have you asked why they have reduced your funding to the level that they have?
No, we haven't.
Well, have you sought a meeting with the Minister?
Well, we saw the Minister last Thursday.
Yes.
I think we started from the point of departure that the grant was cut, not why it was cut,
Was there any reasoning or explanation from the Minister as to why it had been cut?
No, but as I say, we didn't ask her to give an explanation. She was rather helpful. She said that, like yourself, and I'm very pleased that you did, she strongly supported the orchestra. She was aware of the work, actually the same work you're referring to in North Belfast, occurred in Poldlas, and she was well aware of that. And when we put the proposal that Belfast City Council might be prepared to, I'm glad the chairman corrected me, provide some bridging funding, that she might be prepared to ask her colleagues on the executive to share that burden if we could come back, say, by mid-October with an alternative operating model that actually would make sure that we weren't going to build up another deficit starting on the 1st of April 2015.
Yep. Could I suggest that, it's not for me to tell you how to do your job, but that a meeting with the Minister, putting those questions to the Minister, I think would be important, and I also think it would strengthen your case in terms of any future meetings and requests that you may well have with Belfast City Council. And I also think you should be putting those questions to the Arts Council Northern Ireland as well. In relation to the BBC, you were obviously here when Lord Hall was here a couple of weeks ago. Have you spoken to Lord Hall as the sort of national head of the BBC and the controller of BBC Northern Ireland around your plight as well?
We have indeed, Mr. Humphreys. We've spoken to both Lord Hall, to a woman called Helen Bowden, who has just taken over as Director of Radio for all of BBC, which means radio plus the proms plus all the orchestras. And of course, we're in very close touch with Peter Johnson, who, as you well know, is the controller of BBC Northern Ireland. They're all very sympathetic, and indeed have been helpful, and I'll expand a bit. But let me start with the basic proposition. Our bargaining power is not great. The BBC has 5 orchestras, professional orchestras, plus a professional choir. Radio 3 is oversupplied with classical music. The only reason, well, I think it's the only reason, that the BBC feels obliged to buy music from the Ulster Orchestra is that its charter lays down an obligation that it will be represented and help all the regions, all the nations of the United Kingdom. If they were making, I think, a simple-minded business decision, they would simply say, our orchestras already supply enough classical music. So it's not the greatest position to be in as a negotiator. Now, having said that, they are aware of their duties in terms of representing and developing activities in all 4 parts of the UK. Helen Bowden, who, as I say, is in charge of Radio 3, said that hence there would not be a cut this year in the Radio 3 component. There's been a steady cut. Oveen can give you the figures, but there's been a steady cut over the last 3 or 4 years. She's holding it constant for next year, 2015-16, but she says there will be an £82,000 cut in 16-17. Peter Johnson, on behalf of BBC Northern Ireland, has held the BBC Northern Ireland bit constant over the last 3 or 4 years. He's also holding it constant for this year, and I was just talking to him yesterday, and he says he'll, unless something very dramatic happens, be holding it constant for next year. So as far as the BBC is concerned, it's a Radio 3 problem. Now, the only person who can solve that is Lord Hall. And we've been making representations. The Arts Council has been extremely helpful on this. Bob Collins, who, as you know, is the chair of the Arts Council, was previously the chief executive of RTE, and in that role got to know Lord Hall very, very well. When they were both working in the broadcasting industry. And we are making representations to him that the 82,000 should not occur in 16-17.
Okay, can I ask you, in terms of the private sector, have you made overtures to the private sector?
Just could maybe cut in there just to give others a chance.
Okay.
Gordon Dunn, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you very much for coming in this morning. I think we all fully recognise the excellent job you do and the valuable contribution you make to cultural life in Northern Ireland. Just a couple of points. A number of the issues have already been addressed, but again, what is the Ulster Orchestra doing to broaden their appeal to everyone throughout Northern Ireland and beyond? And secondly, I think the point that my colleague was about to touch on was in relation to private sponsorship. I understand Gallagher's JTI had a significant contribution to make in relation to that, and we all know about the sad news in relation to their business, but do they have a commitment, maybe perhaps a legacy commitment to the Ulster Orchestra, and what have you done maybe to find alternative sponsors?
Well, let me make a couple of points, and I'll ask Veronica to pick it up. First of all, I was just going to turn up my hearing aids there. JTI, yes, they have behaved extremely reasonably on this, and they will honour their obligations through till 2017. There's no question of that happening. In any case, a lot of the JTI money is money in, money out, in the sense that it is extremely useful to us in, among other things, enabling us to, we have a program called Move to the Music, bringing elderly people in, particularly from rural areas, to hear concerts, providing concerts and so on. But the money they give us, which is roughly, a couple of $100,000 a year, we spend on the objectives that they want us to spend. But no, JTI is honoring their obligation. More generally, for sponsorship, which also leads back to the question that Mr. Humphrey asked, First of all, Northern Ireland, as we all know, does not have a large private sector. And within the private sector, it has very, very few large companies. As we know, we're largely characterized by small and medium-sized enterprises. And this is not the best ground, as I speak as a fundraiser over the years I've been here, 16 or 17 years for Queen's, for the Lyric, and for a variety of other causes. These are not the best prospects for funding. Having said that, if you take the non-London orchestras, basically the provincial orchestras in Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, etc., and the Scottish ones, in general they raise about 4% of their total income from sponsorship and philanthropy. The Ulster Orchestra raises 4%. So there's not a lot of scope there. You also asked, what are we doing to widen our appeal? And Veronica, perhaps you could say a word about that.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Dunn. As George has touched on in relation to the corporate sector here, there are certain amounts of money available. They do tend to be money in and money out, because the delivery of the projects that they want us to deliver for them means that there is no profit in it as such for the orchestra. They're very important for us in that objective of reaching out and expanding our reach out into Northern Ireland, extending that reach. That's where the learning and participation work is so important to us, and we want to focus on that a lot more than what we have done in the past. We have been doing work in that area over the last 3 decades, and certainly in recent years we've been reaching out into a lot more socially deprived and economically deprived communities in Northern Ireland. We want to do more of that, and we have had some very good discussions with private funders in terms of extending what we do in that area. The reality is there is money there for that type of work through private philanthropy, and maybe not even within these shores, maybe going further afield. So we want to come up with a plan that will extend that work. And it has the potential to be very high impact. The work we've seen in the Poglass area and in North Belfast, it impacts on the individual, it impacts upon the family, it impacts upon the communities. And we can see that as workers when we go in and we're working with these community groups. We can see the impact that it has, and we know that that's where our efforts have to be and should be as a publicly funded organisation. So that will definitely be a broader part of what we do in the future. Just in relation to Mr. Humphreys mentioned earlier the work that's been done in the Shankill and Poglass. We had a 3-month period where we tutored these young people, P5 students, and we went in at the end of June and we had a concert with them, and their parents were there and their grandparents were there, and the children were playing along, and we were really amazed at the musicality that was there within those areas for those children. And there was a grandmother who came up at the end, and she was in tears, and of course we were a bit taken aback and didn't know quite what to say, but her grandchild was one of the children who had viola, as it turned out, and he was autistic, and she said it was the first time she'd seen him been able to focus and to stay still and to take direction. She said he can't do sport because he can't cope with the big groups, can't do arts because it's too messy and it's not focused enough for him, but whenever he got an instrument, it made a huge difference to him, and they were getting great feedback from his teachers in terms of what he was able to do in the classroom as well. So when we see that, we know we want to do more of it, and for us that's where our focus is in terms of getting funding. And it may come from corporate sources, it may come from philanthropic sources, and it may be a combination of some government funding to leverage through those sources. So.
Okay, thanks very much. I think there's no doubt you have an excellent product, and I think it's important you continue to market it as best you can. Thanks, Chair.
Karen McKevitt.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thanks very much for your presentation. And the SDLP are certainly very supportive of the Ulster Orchestra. And my questions aren't to be taken as negative, but I would just like maybe a response. In local media, and over the last number of weeks, this has been highlighted, and I've been talking to a few people who say the Ulster Orchestra is ours and it's local, but yet it would be seen by the local people as Belfast based. So I know that you've touched on this morning about meeting the Belfast Council, and they're going to bring proposals forward. But one of the proposals that I've read in the media was the name changing of the Ulster Orchestra. Can I ask, was that put to the council in order to get a funding package in place, which you're talking about, that bridging funding, to change the name? And if so, was there a suggestion made, because it's very important?
Well, I think it was more the other way around. It stems from where I started this morning, that the council, or many of the councillors, are saying, look, this is the Ulster Orchestra, and yet you're looking to Belfast City Council to solve, uniquely to solve the problem, which is not an unreasonable response. And there's certainly no proposal on the table. And I wouldn't go so far, Mr. Kevitt, to say that they're making that a condition. It's sort of the chit-chat that arises. I've seen quite a few councillors in the last few weeks, and it's sort of something that comes up in conversation. I mean, in terms of what we do for Northern Ireland, as distinct from Belfast, and I think I'll ask Trevor to come in on this in a second, you're quite right. It's Belfast-centric by the nature of it. For a start, there's only 2 concert halls in Northern Ireland that could take the full orchestra. Well, 3, the Waterfront, the Ulster Hall, and the Millennium in Derry, Londonderry. There's other places where you can take smaller ensembles and so on, but not 63 players and get them onto the platform. Historically, Derry Londonderry gave us a small amount of money. Coleraine gave us a small amount of money. It would have amounted to perhaps £5,000 a year. And during the year, we would go and perform in half a dozen places outside of Belfast, but it is not great. And one of the things, and Trevor, perhaps you could come in on this, in the new model would be to have a whole variety of ensembles that could be created out of the orchestra. But Trevor, why don't you pick that up?
Yes, look, my job here is to see if we can structure a sustainable model so that every 4 or 5 years we're not around this table asking for more cash again. So that's really important. Look, a symphony orchestra in any part of the world, minimum size between 60 and 65, that's the minimum size to play symphonic music that reflects 19th, 20th, 21st century music. If it gets much smaller than that, you destroy the ability to perform at the repertoire. So it becomes a chamber orchestra rather than the symphony orchestra. So in my role is looking at a lot of different things, actually, but what kind of a model would be relevant in the 21st century here in Northern Ireland? And my thoughts are that, but basically speaking, I've always dreamed of a situation where we call it a community of players, a community of musicians. So you have an orchestra of, say, 65 players, but in that group of 65 players, you have a symphony orchestra. Fine, it can play symphonic music. You also have a pops orchestra. You have an education ensemble, so you have a number of ensembles that can do education work. So on any one particular day, you could have 10 or 15 ensembles in different schools in the community. The most important thing about a symphony orchestra in the 21st century is that it's relevant to its community that it serves. And if that gets distant or distracted, we end up in a situation like we've got now. And that's possibly happened over the last 10 or 15 years. It's distanced itself through no fault of its own, just the way orchestras have been run for centuries. So in a sense of redesigning a new model, it's very important that apart from the symphonic music, which has a certain period of time, there's then an education outreach and community orchestra ensemble, which is a number of different ensembles from 2 musicians to 60 musicians. And thirdly, there's an ensemble that's very commercially minded, which looks seriously at what I call contemporary music, meaning pop music, popular music, music from the shows, really, really popular music, backing groups that works with contemporary popular artists. So it attracts the different segments of the community. An orchestra in the community, as you probably realise, the community is very segmented in its interest in classical music or interested in music, and we have to reflect that, not just symphonically, but generally in musical terms. The orchestra is in the entertainments business, and if it ever loses sight of being an entertainment body, it's losing its position in the community. It's in pure entertainment, not educational, that's part of it, not necessarily information, it's pure entertainment, whether you're entertaining a 5-year-old or a 95-year-old, it's all about entertainment. And I think that's the relevance of the future and the model we're trying to look at, where we can devise this community of musicians that will serve this group of musicians that will serve the community in every sense that it's required, and then everybody in the community can identify with it, not just that, I hate the word elite group, because you love elite sportsmen, but when it comes to being elite musicians, there's some kind of criticism attached, but people love elite sports people. But that elite community needs to break down so that we are relevant and we've made contact with the population and the communities that we serve. That's throughout Northern Ireland.
Yeah, the reason I asked it was because the contribution of local government, it just seems to come from the Belfast City Council this past while, and the reason why I asked about the name change was because if you were to go the other side and ask other local governments for a contribution, that would be what they probably would be saying to yourselves, do you know? So RPA and stuff coming in. And
we went up to the new Super Council, Derry Londonderry Strabane, and spoke to the Chief Executive Officer there. And we haven't gone to the others yet, but mainly because we didn't think it was the most likely source of support, at least in the short term. If you pick up Trevor's ideas, I mean, one of the reasons we don't go all over the place with the orchestra, it's partly because, as I said, you can't get 63 people, but there's no reason necessarily why you have to take 63 people. If you take Trevor's point, you can have much smaller ensembles of anything from 2 to 63, but I mean, it could be 15, 20, whatever. And we could do a lot more of that. And one of the things we have to do, quite often the collective agreement we have with the Musicians Union constrains us. I'm not using that as an excuse. It's management's job to change that. But I think there is more scope. But frankly, from the talks we had with Derry Londonderry, I don't think that they will have a great deal of money. And yet during the last year, when it was the City of Culture, as you well know, the orchestra was up there, off the top of my head, 4, 5, 6 times and played, I think, it'd be for the Londonderry people to say so, but I think we played a very significant role in advancing their cause and executing the nature of the Year of Culture. So we can do that.
yeah, one of the other points that I wanted to raise was that in the programme for government, growing of the creative industries was very, very important, and it still is. And part of that work that has been done in trying to promote this region would be quite recently the birth, probably, if you'd like, of the film industry here. How important do you think the growing of the creative industries on the Ulster Orchestra link in that local, you know, selling that brand all as one package would be to this region?
Well, extremely important. I'm going to ask Oveen to come in and supply some of the detail, but it's been a major objective of ours. I mean, again, as everyone here is better aware than I am, Belfast, Northern Ireland, has been making strenuous attempts to attract the movie industry, the TV industry, etc. And there are 2 state-of-the-art recording facilities being constructed at this moment. We're very much in touch with Rotha Johnson, the chair of Northern Ireland Screen, and we want to do this because where does the music go at the moment? Goes to Prague. And we think, whereas, although of course Prague and Bohemia has quite a musical reputation over the last 200 or 300 years, nonetheless we think we can do the soundtracks just as well as can be done in Prague, and we've actually begun to make a little breakthrough. Oveen, tell them about our movie making.
Yeah, in April this year, we completed 2 film recordings. One for Puffin Rock, which is a children's programme. So that's going to be released. And then the other one was for an Irish film, A Nightingale Falling, which has already been released in the south. So that was very much a breakthrough for us in being able to do those recordings. And it was something the players were very enthusiastic about, and that was done in collaboration with NI Screen. So we were able to take that first leap forward into the film recording industry, and obviously that gives us an international presence as well. The music for A Nightingale Falling will also go for digital release, which is still a step forward again. So certainly if we can get the right model and move forward and able to get some of these recording contracts, Obviously, we have to compete with the likes of Prague, which isn't easy.
Yeah.
But if we can get ourselves into a good position to be able to do that, that helps both the Ulster Orchestra, but it also helps NI Skring, and it also helps Northern Ireland in that we have an international presence and we can sell our brand.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
David Hillich.
Thanks, Chair. And I suppose most of the real relevant questions have been nearly asked at this stage, but just from my own point of view, could you give me an outline of how the structure, the management of the orchestra? You've mentioned the 63 players, but obviously there's a management structure, reference to a board. Is it a limited company? Is it a charity? A community? What way does it sit?
It's legally, it's a company, like most of these bodies, it's a company limited by guarantee, i.e. it's a charity, we have charitable status, gifts to us attract gift aid and so on. There's a board at the top, and again, like most companies, and I have been over the years, not just while I've been in Northern Ireland, but elsewhere on numerous of these sorts of boards, by which I mean charitable boards as distinct from company boards and so on. Without any doubt, this is the hardest working and I think one of the most competent boards. I think you get invited onto these things and you expect, oh yes, there'll be a meeting every other month. There might be a committee meeting in between. There'll be the odd cocktail party to go to, and that'll be that. Well, unfortunately, for the last 3 or 4 years, that's not been the way it's been at the Ulster Orchestra, and the board has had to do a great deal of the heavy lifting. Underneath that, there were 23 employees. There are now 18. We've had to cut back. And basically, in 3 areas. We haven't got a chief executive at the moment. I'm the executive chairman and performing that role rather inadequately. And I don't say that in false modesty. I don't have, well, I'm a very proud possessor of grade 8 piano, but it doesn't get you very far in terms of running an orchestra. But the money side and whatnot, I can handle. But we have a concerts area, which obviously is an artistic planning, which is one area of the orchestra. We have, of course, Savine's area of finance and operations, and we have Veronica's area of external relations. So there's really the 3 areas that the orchestra has. And as I say, at the moment, there's 18 full-time equivalents.
And will that be reviewed in any way? Because we're talking about the players.
We couldn't cut it any further.
You couldn't?
No. As I say, we've reduced it from 23 to 18. And at the moment, with Trevor's very professional help, we're looking at all sorts of models. And you get yourself into this vicious circle sometimes of being penny wise, pound foolish. For example, if there's one thing I've had a great deal of experience with, both at Queen's and Lyric and indeed in London and other places, it's fundraising. We advertised for a professional fundraiser or development officer, as the jargon goes. We offered a salary, a very low salary, $25,000, which is probably half of the market rate. And surprise, surprise, we didn't get anybody. So we don't have a development director. In some of the models that Trevor is designing and Oveen is costing, we're actually putting back a development director, a fundraiser, at a reasonable market salary, because if we get over this hump, then, as one or two of the questions, I think, from Mr. Humphreys and others were implying, we will have to do a great deal more in, we can. And my experience of fundraising is it's not rocket science, it's just hard slog. You just have to keep going out asking and exploring, etc. I'm engaged in a project in Armagh at the moment on Archbishop Robinson's library, and we have a professional funding consultant there, and it's in some ways a less attractive proposition than the Ulster Orchestra, but on the other hand, it's moving ahead. So I think we actually probably have to maybe hire more people. I mean, we outsource the box office. we used to have 2 people. If you come into the Ulster Hall, there used to be 4 people sitting on the ground floor, 2 for Belfast City Council, 2 for the Ulster Orchestra. Why we did this? Because we had to save money. We thought we could save 2 salaries, etc., etc. We have discovered that, however, we had much better service, not surprisingly perhaps, when we had 2 specially dedicated people in the models that we're playing with now, with various models, of course, but one of the models is we'll bring these people back in, because we think maybe that's the way to proceed. I don't think, Trevor, maybe you've been around so many orchestras, I think you're amazed that we're operating at all at the moment.
I am, and also, yeah, I mean, I came out, I haven't heard the orchestra live for about 10 years. I've been living in Australia. I've heard their recordings and I've heard them on Radio 3, but I haven't heard them live. And so I came out here in that very night thinking that perhaps because of all the situations, the difficulties they've gone through, the standards wouldn't be so great. I've been to about 4 or 5 concerts now, and I have to say this is a superb ensemble. I am amazed that under the present Damocles sword or whatever it is that's hovering above their heads, that they're playing so well. And the concerts I've heard just recently are really quite outstanding in very difficult repertoire. So what you have here is a really fine ensemble, and the tragedy would be to lose it.
Iaria, mention of Power.
Sorry, no. Yes, we've appointed, I don't know if you're aware, probably aware of the big Sistema or a system that's developed in South America, and it's grown up into a really major event all around the world for young people, involving young people in music. And from that, there's a young conductor emerged who was a horn player with that orchestra, is now a major conductor. We just appointed him, Rafael Payer, which is a young, he'd been in his late 20s, I think, late 20s, early 30s. Yeah. And he's just joined the orchestra, gave his first concert 5 weeks ago. And there's a really exciting, tremendous talent there. I recently went to see his debut in London with the London Symphony Orchestra, and not an easy job for a young man to turn up in front of an orchestra like the London Symphony Orchestra. He did a marvellous concert, really, really superb musicianship, and actually the Vienna Philharmonic have just booked him for a concert next year. So you have, again, a really terrific, a young, vibrant, artistic director of the orchestra that will take them places. And also you've got Jacques Van Steen, who's the associate conductor or principal guest conductor, and again, he's established and working really hard with the orchestra, and again, producing some fantastic results. So this is not an orchestra in artistic trouble, it's in financial trouble.
Thank you. Dominic Bradley.
Thanks, Chair. I got this text 2 hours ago from a friend of mine who's a music teacher. I didn't know I was coming here, but as it happens, it's quite relevant to what we're discussing. He says, I'm teaching one of my 10-year-old pupils reels and jigs, plus the tunes of popular songs from his native India. He recently was accepted into the youth orchestra. Yesterday I found the notes of his first tune. I'm amazed at the progress he has made in 2 years. It's great to think that he will always have music, probably long after I'm dead and gone. It's a great feeling to give someone something that is so precious and to know that it is valued. I can see that music is helping another pupil who was traumatised by bereavement. He has been helped greatly by the tonic of participation in music. To be part of this process is the greatest gift that any teacher can ask for. We don't do it just for money. So I suppose, although it takes money to run an orchestra, as you said, the impact and the benefits of it far outreach the value of any, or the cost of any investment in it. And I was quite surprised by the number of people who contacted me about the Ulster Orchestra and asked me to support their lobby. And there were people from brass and reed bands, we have quite a few of those locally, and people from concert bands, audience members and so on. And I do think that having an orchestra is a sign of a progressive, developed and mature community, and I think that we would be much the poorer if we were to lose the orchestra. So, as Karen said, very much support the continuation of the orchestra. Problem now is to get the resources to keep it going. I was looking at your presentation there, and you referred to the Musicians Union contract, and it looked like you want to renegotiate that or look at that again. What does that entail, and how will that, help ensure the future of the orchestra?
Well, Mr. Bradley, it's not a question of trying to blame this all onto the Musicians Union, but it is a national agreement, and agreements of any kind generally constrain you. This one constrains us quite a bit. Trevor, perhaps you could just give 2 or 3 examples.
Yeah, there are many restrictive practices within the agreement, which has gone up over many, many years. I'll give you an example, for instance, that there are times when we're not giving performances. The orchestra are not actually required to perform, but they're on full-time salaries. What we cannot do is use them in educational work on those days. We're paying them, but to bring them in to do educational work, we have to pay them extra fees and extra funds. That's part of the contract they've got with the Musicians Union. Ditto with the film industry. It's fees. So again, it's our ability to earn income. It's money in and money straight out again, back to the players. So we need, I think, to buy out some of the restrictive practices and some of the rights issues. It's happened with other orchestras, and it hasn't quite happened here. And certainly in the UK, there are some instances where this is changing rapidly as we speak.
Okay. Another point was you referred to the funding for a redundancy and an early retirement scheme. Is that a doomsday scenario, or is that part of the new model that you hope to bring in?
Well, to be frank, we're not quite sure. I mean, we're trying to cover every eventuality. Obviously, there's the doomsday scenario. The special fund would pick it up. In other words, there's, as you well know, a fund for organizations that go bankrupt. If we absolutely go completely out of business, we don't have to worry about redundancy. Somebody else can worry about it. On the other hand, it's possible, only possible, that some of the models that Trevor and Oveen are designing could be perhaps redundancies. We don't know yet. We're allowing for that. I think the other point is more about early retirement. Some of you recall that back in 2002, I chaired the investigation to the fire strike at the time, and the firemen, not surprisingly, were keen to impress upon the Commission how dangerous their work was. Well, actually, we found that it was the 23rd most dangerous occupation. If you really want to get yourself killed, as we know in Northern Ireland, become a fisherman, and that's the most dangerous. What has surprised me, though, with the orchestra, people don't get killed. But my goodness, do they have work-related injuries? For a start, over half musicians have hearing problems, and unlike me, they develop them much earlier in life. Not surprisingly, before health and safety, somebody blowing like Trevor, who was a trumpet player, a trumpet into a string player's ear. Not surprisingly, they get it. Secondly, so many of the movements are unnatural. You're a violinist, etc., and your shoulder goes. Tamas, our leader at the moment, Hungarian-American, he's off for 6 months because of shoulder. Ashley Mason, we have a farewell on tomorrow. He's retired early. He's the head section leader of the violas. The joints in his fingers have all gone, etc., etc. And finally, anybody who plays a horn, a woodwind, I've found that my face has changed a bit as I've got older, and your lips change with it, and eventually your ability to really do that job well begins to go. For example, with all due respect to Sir James Galway, who has been extremely helpful in this morning's Telegraph, as you've seen, Jimmy Galway wouldn't be playing as well at 75, he is the same age as I am, or I'm the same age as he would have when he was 45. So you really want to have a scheme where you can allow players who are, past their prime to gracefully retire and go. So that's one of the things that we're trying to. And indeed, as Trevor has said, as we work on these new models, it's something that you would want there, not just at this moment, but more or less continuously, so that as players do get injured or whatever, over time, they're able, as they get into their 60s and whatnots, to gracefully make an exit.
Thank you. Okay. Russell McRae.
Thank you. I'm not sure yet that I fully understand the business model going forward. I mean, you're in a mess now. And I just wonder, is it a bottomless pit that we're going to be asked to throw money into?
Well, let me start, and Trevor. Well, Trevor, maybe you start, and I'll pick it up.
It isn't a bottomless pit, and it can't be, because we'd be around the table every couple of years. I think the model that we're looking at is really, at the moment, the orchestra's about 1.5 to 2 million short to run a full symphony orchestra. Around the 61, 63, 65 mark. It's about 1.5 to 2 million pounds short. That's due to a lot of the cuts that have gone into it again. The more we cut into that size, so if we take the money that we've actually got, reduce the size of the orchestra, reduce the season, we actually destroy it in a sense. A, we reduce the salaries, and B, reduce the amount of time it's working. We can't retain the musicians. But in a sense, I think with a combination of a real reality check on the value of a symphony orchestra and what it costs, plus more entrepreneurial flair, sponsorship, and community involvement with the orchestra, because I'm sure there are pockets of income that we can generate from all sorts of sources by having a model that is more flexible to meet the needs and demands of the community.
Trevor, if you don't mind, can I just check some figures before I see we'll go for it? I mean, how many performances do we have in a year, and what level of ticket sales do we have coming out of that? Do more performances generate more cash, or are they a drain?
Not necessarily. I suppose the concerts around Christmas time would be our, more sellable concerts and would do very well. Typically, our ticket sales have been around 400,000 historically on an annual basis. They did drop last year because we did a few changes to the programme to try and see, could we attract a different audience. So it went down by about 80k, 70,
the
80k.
answer is you couldn't.
Well, no, I think just.
It's what?
It's repertoire. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
I think basically we have to reflect in the repertoire, the music we perform, what the demands are of the community we serve. This is market driven, and I think there is a danger with some orchestras. They just plan a set of programs and they put them on and hope people will turn up. We have to really reflect that now. So what I'm really saying, I suppose, in a sense, we need to take a step back a little bit and plan more attractive programming, perhaps keep the control of the size of the orchestra, because when you play with 63 core group, frequently you have an extra 10 strings or extra 10 players, or you have extra players in to play the repertoire, to cope with the instrumentation of the orchestra. We need to cut back a little bit and stick with our core size, which means probably playing music from the 19th century and a little bit of 20th century. The 20th century orchestras are large, they're, I don't say how large they are, they're 90 plus 100 even, so we need to control that figure, and that means we play a lot more popular programming, and I think that's got to be reflected in everything we do, from, again, serving the community, from the die-hard regulars who've been subscribers for 40 years, down to attracting new people, new subscribers, families, things like that, so family concerts, children's concerts. We need a greater variety of repertoire to meet the box office demands, and I think we can improve on the box office performance.
Yeah, so part of the issue I'm a little concerned, but it's going to be a bit contrarian here, is that as you seek to diversify, even into educational commitments in areas of social deprivation, this issue that you mentioned beforehand about elitism being bad, actually might be the contra, that there is an issue where I do think that we should revel in being elite.
Couldn't agree more.
Good, and it was quite interesting, Trevor, just to hear you say, as somebody from outside, just how good the technical standard was. I mean, I have to confess to just being one of those people that likes the music.
Yep.
I have no idea.
Problem.
Well, whether it's better than Czechoslovakia or anything like that, I have no idea. All I can say is
better than some in London.
Yeah. But it just strikes me that there is an issue here. You talk about connection with community. I'm not sure that you're really even connecting with your core community. Mm-hmm. I tell you, I think I might have mentioned to George, I mean, I would like to go to more, I can't remember when the last time I was at the orchestra. I think it was the festival last year, actually. But people like me ought to be brought more in to, to supporting it. And so I would be interested about how you're going to tap into this great well of people that are sort of interested, but they're not.
Can I just return the question and say what would attract you? What sort of, what music will actually get you you and your family into the concert hall? What's missing in a sense of, it must be repertoire, is it soloist, is it conductor, is it excitement? What's missing?
Well, first of all, I don't get it about the orchestra, about the guy at the front. Conductor.
Easy to solve that.
Well, he just waves a stick. Yeah.
I think, Basil, we should maybe focus a little bit more with our questioning. There's a practical issue, and I could also point out there's an education debate about to start, was started, and several members here, including myself, will have to go to that. So just from the point of view of time.
Okay.
Good question.
I'll hand over to Gordon Dunn to continue the meeting, and I think Leslie Cree's the next speaker.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and you are very welcome. Just wondering, as I sit here listening to you, is it not time to bring in another Dutchman? I'm wondering, and with apologies for pronunciation, if there's an Andre Roux, is it?
Oh, yes.
Which is showing, just what can be done in the big picture stuff. Now, I don't expect you to get to that stage sort of in the short term, but certainly, if you like, there's evidence that it does work.
It works. I better not get too far into this, but it works in the sense that Mr. Roux comes, plays on one night or two nights, attracts a very, very big audience. On the other hand, I have a hunch if he played for a full season in Belfast doing what he does, he wouldn't attract a full season of capacity audiences of that kind. It's a kind of short-term, I'm not knocking at all, but it's a touring, moves around, and yes, it's a very exciting night, but we're talking about putting on, 50 concerts a year or whatever it may be, and you wouldn't have him, even Rafael Payari, you're not going to have him. People want variety, and what he does very well, but it wouldn't be a steady diet.
It's Mr. McRae's point, in a sense that you're talking about repertoire. It's very attractive. It's also incredibly expensive. If you actually saw the cost of the orchestra.
Oh no, it's a different league.
It's a different world. And they play in sports arenas and things. So they're very successful. I think what you're really saying is it's the repertoire. One aspect is the repertoire. People turn up and they know the tunes. And the way that the tunes are presented from the stage is very theatrical. They're all in different costumes. The girls from the fiddle section stand up and sing. It's a really... I'm not quite sure we could go to that with the Ulster Orchestra yet, but certainly the repertoire that they perform, we could feature throughout our season. And I think in taking that step back, I don't mean... If you look at the present season that we're performing, and it's been put together under all sorts of difficult circumstances, the season that we're presenting here in Belfast at the moment is probably superb if it was in Birmingham or London. I'm not being critical about Belfast, but it's a little bit, it's something that you would look at and say, well, we either spend the money on a concert, we're going to have a meal, let's go and have a meal tonight, because I don't understand, I don't know the repertoire. The point you're making is that the popular repertoire would have an appeal here, and I think that's an area that we need to look at. I would call it pops, but if you say pops, people get panicky, thinking we've gone down market and we're, dumbing down the product.
Classic as well there, though, isn't it? But could I ask you a couple of questions, really? Your business is music, but it's all about numbers at the end of the day. You do mention that the forecast for the current year will totally exhaust your resources. Is that true?
That is correct.
No other reserves at all?
No. Levine?
At the end of this financial year, we're left with around 500,000 reserves. So we're projecting a deficit of 400,000. That was before the Arts Council in-year funding cut of 4%. So we're up close to 500,000 loss. So if that were to occur, that would wipe out our reserves come March 15.
So have you done any financial profiling over the last, say, 2 or 3 years to get you to where you are? Are you contemplating doing that?
What we're contemplating at the moment, and what we have to do, is that come 1st of April, we need to be operating a break-even model. We can't continue to operate an orchestra that is loss-making. At the current income we have from the Arts Council, without even in the in-year funding cuts, it's not sufficient to run an orchestra. That's why we're looking at these models to try and get us to a stage that come 1st of April, we're break-even. that we can continue to operate and that we're not.
Yeah, of course,
running
that's the immediate
losses.
term,
So,
but I'm thinking
yeah.
more in the medium to long range, where you actually need to really profile where you've come from and therefore develop where you're hoping to go. Has any work been done on that at all yet? Particularly from a financial profiling point of view.
We're in the middle of it now.
Could you explain in
Yes.
greater clarity what you mean?
Looking at how all your costs, have contributed to the current situation,
Yes.
and the makeup of those costs, and therefore can develop how variable they may be or how you have to vary them.
Yeah, well, that's part of this modelling process. We have a very high fixed cost. It's the payroll. It's around 2.5 million. That's over half of our costs at this stage. We have taken our other costs down pretty much as low as they can go. If you want to look further into how we can take further costs out, you would, as Trevor said, you would operate within the strength of the orchestra. You would have no extra players. Another variable you could take out is that you would have no soloists. Those are about the two main things that we can take out at this stage. If you start doing that, you're going to impact your box office, which is going to impact your income. We're very restricted in where we can go at this stage. So that's why we're looking at the model to see, can we do something to that staff cost that makes it more variable, that makes us more reactive to funding cuts, but also makes us more proactive in trying to get new income in, because we're restricted in terms of education and film work. So it's to try and get a model that gets all those things at the one time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Leslie. William, do you want to come back?
Yes, Chair. First of all, congratulations on your rapid rise to Dermot. It's only temporary. All these things.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say, it's thank you for your candour today, because you are in a very difficult position. But I do think that one of the things I wanted to try and establish is that in relation to Belfast City Council, and you've heard from most of the main players that would be on Belfast City Council. Unfortunately, we haven't heard from Sinn Féin today. But can I just say, in relation to your conversations with the Chief Executive and Council at Belfast and this bridging funding, can I ask you, are you confident you'll get that?
Well, there's degrees of confidence, of course, but without in any way committing the Chief Executive or the councillors we've spoken to, and I should say we've spoken to councillors of all the political parties, including Sinn Féin. My feeling, for what it's worth, is that if we could get a co-funder for Belfast City Council of the bridging funding, the 500,000, that it probably would be forthcoming. As I said, I think a little earlier, Mr. Humphreys, I think the free rent is an easy ask for the reasons I gave. Also, for a very obvious reason, as you know, the Waterfront Hall at the moment is a beautiful hall with a very small conference center. It will shortly become the same very beautiful hall with a very major conference center, which what I think will take some bookings away from the Ulster Hall. The Ulster Hall actually is dramatically underutilized. I was talking to a councillor yesterday who was pointing out that from the last 150 years, all the boxing events in Belfast used to be held there. And indeed, if you come into the Ulster Hall at the moment, there is an exhibition of boxing in Belfast or Northern Ireland over the years. The last big fight, not counting Carl Frampton down on the Titanic slipway, but some of the big fights are now held in the Europa. And, why shouldn't they be held there? Anyways, that's another point. The simple point is, if the orchestra failed, the Ulster Hall would be largely empty.
Well, just then, so council money may be forthcoming if you have a co-funder.
Yep.
How close are you to get, don't need names, but how close are you to getting the co-funder that unlocks that?
Well, I mean, I think that unless I'm missing a trick, and you gave me some advice earlier, which we'll follow up, I'll be welcome to have advice on this. I think the only possibility, we have spoken to the SPADs of the First and Deputy First Minister. We haven't spoken to them. Very, very many claims on their time at the moment, like your own. if there is to be money, it's not going to come directly from the executive. It's going to come through DECAL. And as far as I can see, the only potential likely co-funder would be DECAL stroke the executive, with the executive putting money through DECAL. I think in the longer term, and this builds on the question Mr. Cree was asking too, and Trevor's models, quite some time ago in Westminster, I did some work with Alan Johnson when he was the Minister for Trade and Industry about the post office. And what you found in Whitehall is everybody thought the post office was absolutely crucial. In the same way that we've heard this morning here, and Mr. Bradley and others reading out texts, a very, very large number of people think the Ulster Orchestra is crucial. The Secretary of State then said to departments in London, right, well, since it's so crucial and you don't want me to close down post offices in rural areas, etc., all of the departments should make a contribution, Social Security, etc., etc. I think we've actually got to a position not dissimilar here with the orchestra. It was fantastic, Dominic Bradley reading out that text about the young person. Veronica gave examples. I mean, at the moment, all the funding has to come from DECAL through the Arts Council. But we have a very big product we can offer Belfast City. We have a product to offer in terms of multiple social deprivation. We have a product to offer in terms of musical education. Paul Sweeney, the Permanent Secretary at Education, is organizing a meeting on the 25th of November, bringing together education library boards, et cetera, et cetera. And in some ways, it seems to me, prison service, music used in rehabilitation, music, there are several places we could ask for money.
Yeah. Well, can I just say, I think, in conclusion, the point that Ms. McKevitt made earlier is absolutely very important, and I think sage advice. It is a regional orchestra, and as a Belfast man and a former councillor, I'm hugely proud of Belfast and this city. But it is a regional council, and that changing a name may well be something which will cause you difficulties in the future, because
you're quite right.
The super councils, when they come in, and this where the bridging funding is important, the super councils, when they come in, are going to have greater resource, and those are doors that you will be no doubt knocking. But can I just say, we're all very proud of the Ulster Orchestra, the work you do, and I wish you well in the work that you're doing, and I hope that the orchestra is long going to represent Northern Ireland whole band away.
That was a good speech, William. Right, Karen, you want to come in briefly?
Just one final point. A lot has been discussed today, but to me, cross-departmental, it comes into the remit, and the Ulster Orchestra comes into that. Have you considered a meeting with the Deputy Minister, as well as the Culture, Arts and Leisure Minister? I know you've met her last week, but you can talk about the tourism aspect of what the Ulster Orchestra brings, and the international, the way you can sell the brand right across the world. Have you considered approaching the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Investment?
We have, Karen, it was in fact the very first department, not the minister, we approached the Permanent Secretary at the time. And we are also been in discussions with I&I, Invest Northern Ireland, over this point, because as everyone is aware, there's a cultural tourism product, if I may put it in such vulgar terms, to which not only we contribute, the Lyric, the MAC, and a variety of other organizations contribute, but of course this sector is also in a bad way, and as you know, the council has just cut the promotion budget for tourism and so on. One of the things we were particularly looking at was cruises. As you know, there's I think 98 cruise liners a year coming into Belfast now, something of that order. And we were exploring with Titanic Quarter and Titanic Belfast, the prospects of doing this. I mean, I'm not saying it's hopeless, but in fact, I've had a bit of personal experience with North Americans getting off these cruise liners. They come in at 6 in the morning, 8 o'clock, they disgorge them into 25 coaches and zoom them around the city. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they grab them back for the simple reason they want them in the casinos and all the other places, spending their money, of course, on the ship rather than spending it in Belfast. So the opportunity of actually getting at this is not impossible, possible, but it's tricky. But we've certainly been looking at that. I'm not sure. I think one of the main ways you could use the orchestra would be actually promoting Belfast, various areas, Derry, Londonderry, whatever, and the province as a whole abroad. I mean, with my accent over the years, I've often been wheeled out by INI to speak to inward investors, to tell them that unlike the managing director of the Thrones, you know, actually there is something to do in Belfast after 4 o'clock in the evening. And it isn't a bad place to live. We have an extremely good education service and schooling and so on, all the sorts of things that managers coming in and indeed workers want to know. And I think one of the things I often quote Liverpool. Liverpool also has a fantastic young conductor, a chap called Petrenko, in his case Russian rather than Venezuelan. Liverpool City Council gives 1.5 million to the Liverpool Orchestra, not because they're musically more sensitive, intelligent, aware, etc. than Belfast City Council, but because they wish to create a view of Liverpool abroad, that it's not just all deprivation, it's not just hooliganism, etc., etc. It's a city of culture, and what that means in terms of inward investment. I think the orchestra could do a fantastic amount in that when the First and Deputy First Minister goes abroad, when INI has got delegations here, when the city is trying to promote itself. I think we could do a great deal.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Basil, very briefly.
Thank you, Chair.
We normally are.
I will be. Chair, under your guidance, no problem. A couple of quick questions. City of Culture, Derry, Londonderry, do you not think you should be doing more?
In Derry, Londonderry?
Yep.
We'd be delighted to. As I say, it's the one council, actually the new council, the Super Council, went up to speak to.
Well, they do have a theatre or a place.
The Millennium is the only other place, Basil, that we can actually get the 63 players on the stage without fear of them falling off.
So, next question. If you're going to go to lots of councils, is there anything you can do in terms of a mobile stage? I mean, we do have, you know, problems in the slips and things like that. If you want to get funding from other councils, I really do think you're going to have to turn up there.
We can certainly, I'm not sure what the mobile, you say there are mobile stages.
I'm only asking, you're going to have to go, if you want funding from Armagh, you're going to have to go to Armagh.
First of all, we have done a number of events for Derry, Londonderry City of Culture. So
and
that has been done, yeah, a handful of
How many concerts outside of Belfast?
This committee has just oversight that we have put an additional, what was it, 2.5 million? The last monitoring round, October monitoring round, into legacy projects for the City of Culture. There's a lot of funding going in there, and you need to be looking to see how you can be part of that. They got huge recognition both throughout the island of Ireland and on a UK basis. It is a City of Culture. It would not be a good thing if the legacy of the City of Culture was that we're going to lose the Ulster Symphony.
No, it certainly wouldn't.
I just think there's an issue in that. But if you then move on a positive note, because I know the chairs will be keen to get me to move on, you're going to have to move to different venues. If you've only got 3 venues and you want funding, how do you technically take 63 people?
We wouldn't take 63. We'd reduce the size. There's quite a bit of repertoire you can play, which is and special arrangements you can do, which could reduce the size of the orchestra. So we could, as a minimum, take 45. We could take 55. We can vary that size of the orchestra to suit the venues.
Okay, last question on this then. It seems to me that you have a brand called Ulster, the Ulster Orchestra, which I think you would be unwise to lose. But I do think that you might consider strengthening it by association with other things that have a similar brand. Again, I don't know whether this is even possible, but Ulster Rugby does have a great big stadium. I mean, is there anything you do in terms of trying to popularise the music that you do about having either pre-match or post-match or...
We've actually already done that. Veronica, probably?
Yes, we had a collaboration with Ulster Rugby. I don't know if anyone saw it, where we filmed a promotional video with them, and it was shown across, it was part of the Heineken Cup. I think it was the semi-final they got into. So that actually was great at raising profile for us. We have lots of friends in the Ulster Rugby. The difficulty is our concerts are on a Friday night, and so is the rugby, so it makes it slightly difficult. The more flexible model that Trevor is talking about will allow us to split the band.
Do you have a concert? Do you have a concert every Friday night?
No.
I just think Just one, just
Finally,
last question.
finally.
Last question. Finally. Presbyterian minister stuff. Right.
There's only 3 points in there.
With just this issue, it's how you could you technically take a large grouping of people to other venues like Ulster Rugby and be part of their success, because that's what gets you out there.
Well, that was the idea of connecting with Ulster. They came to us and we came up with this collaboration. We haven't done anything since. In terms of going out into Northern Ireland, we do go to other venues. We don't do as many as we would like because it costs quite a bit of money to take a band out. So that's the funding. Again, back to the funding issue. Certainly our intention would be to do an awful lot more regional work where we can get the money to do it. And when we can split the band into smaller ensembles, you can go to different venues. Venues in Northern Ireland generally find 63 is quite a lot to get onto a stage because the stages are just generally built smaller than the theatres here. So,
Thanks very much. Thanks, Basil. Cathal, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chairman. Apologies. We were at about a second stage of legislation there going through, and sorry I had to be elsewhere. But I'm sorry I missed most of your presentation, but I still have more than a passing interest in the Ulster Orchestra, and I'm glad that the Minister has affirmed her support for it as well. I remember when the Ulster Orchestra used to play in the North West, particularly Derry, that one bus went on in the evening and the other bus stopped in James Murphy's for one of the finest traditional sessions, and that was a regular occurrence. It was a great event. I don't want to come the cynic part who knows the price of everything, the value of nothing, but I was doing a wee bit of research yesterday evening just in terms of this, in terms of your turnover, and I'm glad, Sir George, you actually confirmed the return on your per pound funded investment. Now, I'm not trying to draw you in this, but the Northwest 200 are sitting outside, and they said that they returned £27 for every pound invested.
Who said that?
The Northwest 200.
Right.
Who are sitting outside and going to give us a presentation. Your figure was £2.62.
2.62.
Is there any way in which that figure, because that's, there is a stark sort of maybe comparison, and maybe it's unfair, it's apples and oranges and all the rest of it, but maybe is there anything that could be done to actually see a greater bang for your buck, as they say?
A bang for the buck? Well, there probably is. I mean, for a start, I wouldn't mind saying the calculations. 27 is a remarkably high,
they're figuring up my
high figure, and I live not out at the Northwest, but I live out in South Antrim, where the Dundrod, the Grand Prix is held with motorcycle and closes most of the roads once a year. Anyways, 27 is very high. I don't think we could do anything to get 27 to 1, if that is actually the right figure. I'm sure there's things we could do for a start. As I said during the presentation, it doesn't take into account what we're trying to do with the movie industry and all that sort of thing. But I mean, again, I guess if you could get more people to concerts and all that, you could increase the multiplier. Oveen, do you have an observation?
Yeah, like I suppose in terms of calculating that, it's a defined calculation. If you want to really expand on it, I'm sure you can get it above the 2.6. As George said, the film industry, digital recordings, like once you take that into, that's all economic spend for the North.
So the figure of 264 is, you're saying, is conservative?
It is conservative. 262, yeah, it is conservative.
262.
And I mean, it's conservative because a great deal is not countable, in a sense.
And the social benefits, obviously,
we're not
stuff that
putting
you
those in at all.
can't quantify at all.
No.
Okay. All right, Chair, thank you.
Thanks very much. And thanks, Sir George. We'd like to extend our thanks to you and your panel for a very informative session. I think we really gained from it, and I'm sure you were impressed with the enthusiasm of members here.
Very much so. We're very, very grateful for, I think, unanimous support, at least in principle.
Yes, indeed. I think it's important that we continue to lobby, obviously, for support, and that you, as an organisation, do what you can to remodel and try to make your organisation, I suppose, more efficient and more effective. But thank you very much for your contribution.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And apologies, this is my first session in the chair, so it's all a bit new to me as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
There you go. We're still Okay, members, just following on from what we've heard, any members want to make any suggestions in relation to actions, follow-up actions?
Chair, I think it would be very important if we got in touch as a committee to the Deputy Minister to see if there's any way that we can come together with Culture, Arts and Leisure Minister for some form of a package. I will use the word rescue because that's how serious that the presentation we've heard today is. I know there's many a time that you can hear people come with a bag and hat in their hand. I just think it would be a total disaster for this region if we were to let the Ulster Orchestra go. I think it's very, very important that if there's a package put in place by Belfast City Council, you know, there's sort of a bit of match funding there that can be rescued, you know, and that the Ulster, to me, the Ulster Orchestra name should certainly, the Ulster part of it should stay because it is selling the region as one, you know, so I think that's very important, but Deputy Minister should be approached.
Okay, Carl. Carl, you want to...
Chair, just, and maybe I missed it, and I apologise if I did, just the whole range of the different operational models, I think that's somewhere we could drill into and see exactly what options are available there. I know I've mentioned it in the past with the youth orchestra and people coming through and all the rest of that and various other options, so maybe that's something that we could do with a bit more detail.
Yeah, some of it was touched on in the presentation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm sorry, but
that's fine.
We'll check on that.
We'll have a proposal and we read together.
Yeah, I think you know, it was encouraging to hear everything firsthand because difficulty quite often is it's all in the media before you get it. You don't really get the bones of it. So I think we have that, and it was encouraging to see everyone was supportive of it. And I think, as Cathal said, the real answer is going to be in the new model. You know, in remodelling, for example, I would like to see that financial bit because they're obviously getting no royalties from television or anything like that, presumably. And that's, you know, that sort of a mix. And the partner, if they can find a partner in the private sector, that would also be very important. So quite happy to go along.
The essence of time is among us here, you know, and like come December, there'll be no more. It's coming very quick to us, you know. So
the other issue, of course, what have we done to lobby the Decal Minister? Have we read the Minister?
Chair, no, the committee hasn't done that yet. There were some suggestions coming from the orchestra there that the committee may want to consider. This idea of the bridging money, Sir George indicated that he felt it might be worthwhile suggesting a partner for that bridging funding. Now, members may want to consider writing specifically to the Decal Minister on that basis, but also asking the Decal Minister then to talk more widely to her executive colleagues. Potentially, if members want to, we've had suggestions then obviously to write to the Decal Minister, writing to the Deputy Minister, but members may want to consider writing directly to the Office of the First Minister and Deputy First Minister to seek executive action on whatever basis members would like to do that in terms of either the bridging funding or generally asking them to lead the executive in looking for long-term solutions for the orchestra as well as the short-term financial issues that they have.
Chair, do not need to give the Minister her place first.
Absolutely.
I think we need to talk to her really quickly, you know.
Yeah, we'll have a suggestion. We write both ministers, Daddy and Decal. We all agree.
What's the angle on Daddy, sorry?
Chair, that was...
The tourism, well, the Ulster Orchestra can be is an international event as well. They go around the world selling the brand of and the names in it, the Ulster Orchestra, so that they're selling this region, and there's the cultural tourism in it as well. And so
Chair, with the events company function having moved to Derry, a lot of that emphasis on cultural events, large-scale events, with a tourism angle are now sitting. With Derry, there's a lot of cultural tourism that Derry has actually funded. So there is certainly a strong part of their remit does.
All agreed, and we write to both ministers.
Yes, and invite the Minister, Decal Minister in, as quick as possible.
On this issue. All agreed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Chair.
Yeah, that takes us on then to the briefing from the North West 200. So maybe bring the representatives in, please.
Chair, can I direct members to the Clerk's memo at page 15 in PACS and the North West 200's briefing at page 18. Chair, can I also make a plea to members that the gentlemen have travelled a long way today, so if we can hold on to quorum for as long as possible, that would be greatly appreciated.
Come on, motorbike,
Yes.
No, not today. Not today.
Okay, gentlemen, you're very welcome. Mervyn and Gerard, it's great to have you along here. And I think we all recognise the valuable contribution the North West 200 makes to culture in Northern Ireland. We talked a lot about it in the previous presentation, but there's a great following for motorsport in Northern Ireland. I think personally I recognise it, and I hope all the committee does. And the valuable job that you do organising the North West 200, it must be a very difficult job indeed. And the decisions you have to make, Mervyn, on the event, especially the week and the lead up to it, are most difficult. And I think we all recognise the significant event that it is. We talk a lot about tourism. You're doing a lot to promote tourism, bringing people from across the world, to bringing in first-class riders to such an event. It's a difficult job. You go out and about, you market Northern Ireland, you market the North West 200. And we as a committee must recognise the good work that you do. And if there's anything we can do to support you, we're willing and open to hear that. Okay. So I would obviously now ask you to make your opening presentation.
First of all, could I pass on sincere thanks to this committee for allowing us the opportunity to come along today and present. Gerard McCauley, Gerard's Operations Manager. Now, before we came here today, we were going to do the presentation 50-50, but unfortunately I'm on the back foot today because I forgot the glasses. So it's the bulk of it's going to be done by Gerard. But anyways, just as I say, sincere thanks, giving us a chance to come along, just, you know. I suppose the North West 200 itself is not only one of the biggest sort of outdoor sporting attractions in Ireland itself, but it's one of the events which has been going for a long number of years. Our first event kicked off in 1929, and in 2015 will be our 86th anniversary for the event itself, just, you know. So really pleased with that, really pleased that we have moved things forward, just, you know. What we would like to do, committee, is just to give you a brief presentation covering some of the background on the North West, and Gerard will give you that. I suppose how the event has moved forward after the weather we had in 2013, and then 2011 wasn't a good year for us with the various things that happened, and how the event itself had to be abandoned in 2013, and how we think we have pulled the whole thing round again from them, just, you know. Just to give you briefly some of the challenges and the issues which we have faced, pull the event round. The organisational structure of the event, because it just doesn't happen with ourselves, stuck in an office 50 weeks of the year type of thing. We have a management team around us as well, who are all guys who are doing a day's work but helping us as well, just on the North West itself. So we have a management team there which we've pulled together, and they're, you know, good guys and who do a really good job on it as well, you know. The profile and how we believe it has grown, and then sort of how we've taken it out, if you like, to the global stage throughout the world itself, and all the work that we have done over this last number of years. And then finally, just what we would like to sort of discuss with yourselves in the event of support for the event. Gerard, do you want to maybe kick off on the background page, just, you know, and give details on that?
Thank you, Mervyn. I thank Mervyn for forgetting his glasses this morning as well on his way up. We only found out about half an hour before we got here. But good morning, everybody. A bit of sort of general background around the North West 200. It's very much, as Mervyn said, it's come a long way in 85 years. Would now be ranked with the TT and Macau Grand Prix. Run every year in mid-May, and possibly not everybody would know, but there's a full Race Week festival associated with the event. We now have 2 days of racing. We introduced the second race day in 2012 following some poor weather in 2011, and there's quite a lot of activity that runs the entire week of the event itself. Visitors do vary from year on year. This year we estimated 85,000. 20% of those visitors would have come from overseas, and we conduct research annually to get those figures. We have roughly 4,000 grandstand seats. Each of our grandstands has big screens. The one on the paddock, for example, would be 100 square metres. So with the TV coverage, we have 30 cameras around the course. We have cameras and helicopters and Greenlight TV who shoot the coverage for us. It's tremendous coverage, not just of the race, but of the entire coastal area. So it's a fairly good week. Teams and riders wise, we're bringing teams now from all over the world. European countries, America, Australia, New Zealand. It certainly has very much become an international event. Top teams from Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, BMW. One thing which we have noticed now in the past 2 to 3 years is there's been a resurgence in the interest in road racing throughout the world, and certainly Northern Ireland would be viewed as very much at the hub of that. You have the re-emergence of a second generation of Dunlops, which has fueled that as well. So the brand's never really been more recognisable, but we've got some media figures from this year which we'll present to you shortly. 2013 and 2014 certainly couldn't have been any more different. We had a scene on race day in 2013 of rain and 4 inches of water flowing down the roads. We moved from that to what was probably one of the most successful Northwests in a generation. But there were a lot of challenges that we had to overcome to move from one to the other. But I think 2013 presented certainly the team, Mervyn and everybody around, with we really had to move forward, and there was a lot of public support for the public consultation. Great support through Stormont for the passing of the changes to the road closing legislation bill, which really changed public perception that when they came to the Northwest they were going to see a full programme, and that was very, very important to us. Important in terms of our development plan, our business plan and our 3-year package with NITB, but also in terms of marketing. And we actually changed PR companies. We now use Stephen Davison as our press officer. Stephen would be, I suppose he would be the foremost writer and journalist in terms of road racing worldwide.
Good photographer too.
An amazing photographer, yeah. Yeah, for anyone who's seen his work, he certainly is. His input into our marketing plan, I think, re-engaged with the fans, and to some extent, I suppose the change in people's habits and use of social media has allowed us to change the way we market the event. And certainly our Facebook page has grown 3 times in 18 months from what it was, and continues to grow. In fact, we have a post-event campaign running this year, which we never did before, which has kept the event in the highlight of people's minds. But certainly, taking that, changes to road closing legislation, marketing, and we also looked at the commercial value of the event, the branding. Vauxhall signed up for another year. We then had interest from Pertec, an international motor lubricant company, and Milwaukee Power Tools. So we were seeing sponsors, not from Northern Ireland, but from outside Northern Ireland, want to get on board. And I'll talk about their media and PR value shortly. In terms of management of the event, I suppose it's fair to say it's become a fairly complex event to stage. It's a high-risk, high-speed sport. We close 9 miles of public roads. We race at 200 miles an hour. Hence the thrill and the excitement and the draw for the fans. But to be able to put that, promote it, market it, has become a complex structure. Safety, we began the first set of our risk assessments this weekend. The process for that now involves all the emergency services, all the key emergency planners within the emergency services. There's a well-worked project management structure in place to produce an event safety plan, which we continually work at, we review at each year. We don't just leave it static. The organisational structure within the event, which Mervyn mentioned at the start, comes from within Coleraine District Motor Club. That side of it's volunteers, volunteer managers that work on 16 components of actually staging the event. That links with Coleraine Borough Council, PSNI, Northern Ireland Fire Service, Tourist Board, to actually then put the whole event plan together. We're actually going for our first meeting tomorrow of a new development group with NITB, Tourism Ireland and Invest NI, which is a great step forward. in terms of the 3-year package we have with NATB. So we're looking forward to that and seeing how we can harness their skill, knowledge, support to market the event. Mentioned volunteering before. It's a huge part of the North West. During race week, there are 800 volunteers involved in being able to put the event on. Many of them unsung heroes, many from the local community. They help set the course up. Work would start 6 weeks prior to the actual race week in constructing safety for the course. They help deconstruct the course because whilst everybody loves the North West, once it's over, they would like the place to return to normal. So we do it within a week. The raft race is normally on in Portrush the following weekend, and we have that cleared away. Even to the extent of we work with McGilligan Prison, and we would have prisoners on pre-release that would come out and they help us with course setup. So there's a whole structure around residents, community that goes on in the background that probably a lot of people don't really know about. The profile. These are some of the key figures, and they would be part of our sponsorship brochure for 2015. And there's some fairly big numbers here, we think. Each year the North West is evaluated by a company in Belfast called NIMS. We also have viewing figures from BBC, from Greenlight TV. Our PR value, for example, jumped from 2013 at 1.4 million to now 7 million. Our return on investment of tourist board monies, and this is using their calculator, is £27 for every pound spent. Satisfaction with the event is, we're struggling really to bridge the gap because we still have a 1.9% gap, but we've been sitting around 96, 97, 98 each year. But we put a lot of work into that and feedback to get those figures. Viewing figures and BBC keep increasing year on year. It's a key event for BBC, and we're looking forward to it being screened on main network, BBC Two, in the coming year. Google and Facebook, I suppose with other events and most mediums nowadays, we're using social media more and more and more to communicate the event. Interestingly, our broadcasts to the world on sports networks are increasing again and again and again. Greenlight are about to sign a new deal with CBS in North America to screen the North West into roughly 96 million homes on top of the worldwide coverage we already have. So we're pleased with that. Planning for, moving on to planning for next year and beyond. I suppose we've taken where we were. 2013 really was a big step. You know, it was, where are we going to go with this? How are we going to take it forward? And I think, you know, Mervyn would constantly say we have to keep pushing. We have to keep pushing. Check the detail of everything, Jared. And I suppose that's where the drive has come from, is to move the event forward. It's very much part of moving forward. We've now seen how we can take our media value and convert that into sponsorship. We want to increase that. We're looking at our whole branding strategy at the minute. Our new marketing theme, we're now basing it on the use of the N and the W. So nowhere better, nowhere, using this nowhere in everything we do. And we're working on that at the minute. Looking forward to the meeting in NATB tomorrow to see how we can harness all their support. And then back to the emphasis on safety, because it is key for the event, it's key for what we do. We're running a road race in a highly residential area, 3,500 people. So it underpins and it's at the core of everything that the North West is about. As I say, we started work at the weekend and that will continue right through until May. In fact, that work is also overseen by an independent safety panel. And that would be people who are former international road racers, representative from PSNI BikeSafe, and representatives from the Motorcycle Union of Ireland. So not only is our plans examined by experts, there's another layer of oversight on top of that as an advisory committee. And that's really where we are, where we've come from, what we have sort of worked at in the past couple of years, and where we plan to go. We want to see the event grow. We want to see the attendances increase. We know there's an increase in popularity in the sport worldwide, and we want to make sure that Northern Ireland stays at the centre of that. I suppose, coming on to our final bit, and I'm probably going to hand back to Mervyn here to bring something in. I think we've moved things along. In the last 20 years, the event has changed considerably. There's a very professional team behind the event. It's producing, we believe, significant value for Northern Ireland, but it's doing it annually, does it every year. I think the return on investment is very good. I certainly think some of the figures are on a par with other premier events. But there are some challenges that we still face. Much of what we do is in some regards is temporary. I mean, if you drove past the paddock and the coast road now, there's nothing there. So we're building temporary structures for what is an annual event each year. And so there's repeated cost that we would like to move away from, particularly around safety, particularly around the fencing and the safety bails that we have. And it's really to gain support to be able to access that and to be able to use that for us to work on the event and take it forward. And I suppose at this point I'd pass to Mervyn.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I suppose, Mr. Chairman, just as Gerard has said, I suppose it's to look at what the possibility is, maybe some money around the capital costs for the North West. DCAL have always been supportive of the North West in the past, and we certainly appreciate all we've got done over the years, kind of way back, I suppose, to the tarmac and on the paddock and sort of in that previous time. But it's to really look and see if we can get some support around further purchase of safety bails, which will continue to increase on the safety side of things. As Gerard says, we carried out our first risk assessment of the weekend, took 5 hours on the course setup itself. And in that, there is a need for further safety bails and safety improvements. We spend roughly in the region about £40,000 per year on the hire of safety fencing. We safety fence 2.5 miles of the course, and that is a requirement of the risk assessment. So there's 2.5 miles of the security fencing that's on there, the airs fencing, which we hire year on year on year, which costs us roughly in the region of about £40,000 just to hire. So I suppose our request is from your committee is, can you help us, if possible, with the purchase of further safety bails? There has been safety bails in the past purchased through 2 and 4 and Sport NI, which have been used by all the clubs. And it would be in our interest if there was anything to provide those to all the clubs as well, to the Ulster Grand Prix and to Cookstown and the various other clubs itself, as we have done in the past. But certainly primarily for the North West, because we are, I suppose, the one event which uses the most bails, and they are the approved safety bails by the governing body, by the FIM. So it's really that, Mr. Chairman, and also, is there any possibility of funding to allow us to purchase fencing? And that's where we're coming from.
Okay, thanks very much. And impressive presentation, sir. I think you've done very well. And maybe Mervyn needs to watch out. But I think the important thing, obviously, is safety in relation to this event. And every year it becomes a priority, and certainly the media pick up on it. And I know it's a very difficult thing to manage, but how do you manage the risk? We have now the flexibility within the organising the dates. Maybe you could pick up on that and maybe add a bit more in relation to the benefits of the flexibility. There are also benefits, I think, from the tourism point of view as well, because but I always think the most difficult job is someone that's normally at the North West, when you're watching the weather.
Yeah.
You have riders there from all over the world, and they're busting to go, and it's wet, but you have to make a call, and you have to. That's where your skills come in on risk assessment. You have to assess the risk. So I think I think it's important that you can assure us that you're doing that, and that you have real, genuine reasons as to why you don't run an event. Yeah. And it's trying to get that out to the public is difficult as well. But maybe you could just clarify those issues. But the other point I've just written down is about the race week, the benefits that has been, how you've developed that, how you've involved the local councils and so on. I think you've done well there. But how significant do you see that is to your success?
I suppose, Mr. Chairman, the first point on the road closing order itself, and as you remember, I mean, we kicked that, I suppose, that off back in June 2013 after we had a disaster at the Northwest itself. With withdrawal of DRD to give us the flexibility, and then, as you know, that went into public consultation, which was a major step forward, and which was passed in January of 2014 itself. That was a major step forward, and you know, as I say, I've said it before, we certainly appreciate the help around that. Really good from the point of view that if we have a bad day on the Saturday and we were able to look at the forecast, you know, and it said Saturday's bad, then we had the flexibility to move on to the Friday or the Sunday itself. It's probably fair to say that our last wish was to ever go on to the Sunday. It was never ever about Sunday racing. It was always about giving us the flexibility, the Wednesday, the Friday or the Sunday as a last resort, if you like, you know. So we got that, and then we worked very, very closely with the Met Office in London. And we paid for, I suppose, for advice on, hey, what's the weather going to be like on the Saturday, you know, and we were doing that right through the week because the requirement, as you folks know, was to give 24 hours notice prior to the Tuesday or the Thursday. So, you know, we had that, and that was really good. It was a major step forward and allow us to change. So, again, our thanks on that end of things. Safety is at the top of the tree, is say, you know, we carried out a first risk assessment again, 5 hours, and the course setup itself. It's detailed and everything. We have a safety and event planning group. We meet on a monthly basis with all the, as we refer to them as the blue lights, and that is all detailed, and each of them has their own risk assessment. We have an emergency compound to the start area where if we have an issue, there's anything on the course, then that's dealt with, you know, immediately. So again, that is our number one priority. If conditions are not good, if the course is wet and dry, then it may well be that I just decide, listen, okay, it's too dangerous, you know, and that is always a difficult step, you know, at the end of the day to decide that, because you have, you know, 80 or 100,000 people around the course itself, you know, and to be fair, you usually get a bit of flack, you know, if you well, you make the right decision or you don't make the right decision, you know, so it's never the easiest, but it's always geared towards the safety side of things, talking to the team managers, talking to the teams themselves and saying, okay, listen, you know, it's just too dangerous.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers that point, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. On the Race Week Festival, we work very, very closely with Coleraine Borough Council, and now will be the new Super Council itself on Race Week activities, and the council have been good working with us around that, and through that we have built up a Race Week Festival programme, and it kicks off on the Sunday afternoon with the church service, which we do on the Sunday on the marquee. 300-400 people attend, and then that kicks off everything through the week itself. We have extended that now with the 3 races on the Thursday night, which has been a big plus. We never had that in the past. So we have worked closely with the residents, and we've got out there and we've been out on a number of occasions. In fact, I was out again yesterday with some of the residents, just talking to them, you know, and just building up that relationship, you know, and if there are any issues or any problems around the course, then dealing with them. I got my fence broken after the Northwest. Yeah, that's fine, just leave it with us and we'll have it repaired for you in a very short space of time. It's things like that where it doesn't build up and then there's an annoyance. So it's a matter of working with them and gelling with them, just, you know, to make sure, hey, everything is right. The festival has been good. You know, we produced 40,000 leaflets itself. We have that goes out as far as we have one guy, Horst Sager, who's from Liechtenstein, and we had him in the front of it, and he passed these out throughout the world, just, you know, so he was really taking it back with that. But it has been really good, and then that includes a number of events on during the week. Itself kicking off with the service on the Sunday, in the hospitality marquee, and we have 500 people there on the Saturday and 500 people on the Thursday evening for the 3 races itself.
No, it's good.
A variety of other events right through the week itself, but that has been a major step forward.
Good. Thank you. Well done. Cathal, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, Baronantis maybe is a not infrequent visitor to the Northwest, be it on race day or indeed some of the practice sessions, and I say I'd like to commend the Coleraine and Street Motor Club for the success. You're in your 86th year, and you know much of that is down to, as you rightly say, the volunteers and the committee and everything else, and yourself, Mervyn, at the head of all that. And much of it also, actually, this year, I wearing my DRD hat, I was very pleased that we got the road closures legislation through to give you the flexibility that you have. And I was also very impressed by the commitment and the support that came from residents, because quite a number of them wrote in during the consultation in support of it.
Yeah.
Quite a number, well outnumbered those who had some objection or other, and that's no doubt due to the hard work that you did do. At a constituency level, the value of the North West is absolutely huge, not just to the East Derry constituency, but to right across the whole north and even as far as Donegal and further afield. I suppose just there was 3 years of virtual disaster there, whereby I think we had one race in 3 years, and I knew regular visitors that came, and I suppose maybe they questioned their sanity or whatever else at the end of that. No doubt that has done damage. Have you quantified that sort of amount of damage, and how best has that been rectified or been looked at in terms of numbers, income, and what have you?
I suppose if you look at the figures itself, in 2013 the PR value was 1.5 million. Yeah. In 2014 it rose to 7 million for 2014. I say that's carried out by an independent company here in Belfast. The other figures are there for on the advertising value for a sponsor who puts in roughly needs about £12,000 to sponsor a race. The value to the sponsor was 400,000 in advertising value this year. And that was the anchor in Portstewart who supported us this year with the race. And NIMS came back and reported that they get 400,000 out of it, advertising value itself, which is a major thing forward. I suppose all we can do, Mr. Chairman, is look at the information that we're getting back, look at the feedback on it. The survey this year was 98%. I keep scouring because we didn't get 99.9, but as I say, it was 98% this year, and the feedback on that was really good. From the people, and that was a survey of 150 people throughout the week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So I suppose we have those figures and the NIMS figures to go back on, just and then £1 for every £27, and generally everything that goes with that to ensure that we have moved forward.
Chair, I just want, have you worked out, because of the road closure sort of flexibility, you worked out a sort of some sort of calculation as to which of those, obviously the Sundays, as you rightly say, is a last choice, but have you worked out, would a Friday be better? I know that you're crammed in there because the TT starts the following week, and many riders, many bikers go on from the North West to the TT. So, which would be the most opportune there? Would it be the
planning? The planning, funny enough, for contingency days was unique in many ways. When we first looked at this, sat down with the emergency planners from PSNA, Northern Ireland Ambulance Services, and Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue. It had never been done before in Northern Ireland, so it was presented this big challenge. We looked at what the TT did in terms of their contingency days. They had it in place and have had it in place for a number of years, but the difficulty is with it, we have to select 2 days in advance to use, but you're being driven by weather patterns, which was why we worked very, very closely with the Met Office, so that we had as accurate a set of forecasting coming in to allow us to determine which way we were going to go. I think leading on from that, your next challenge is communication, is how do you communicate that change to everybody involved, not only in the event, but the general public. So there was a whole strategy and set of mediums that were set up to be able to communicate that. But picking the actual day is going to be always dependent on the weather pattern. Now, we extended that to race day itself. So at that point, we had moved on from being able to use the Met Office to being able to use Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue, have a satellite truck that's on site in the compound, and they were feeding us half-hourly reports from live radar and Atlantic weather systems. So that allowed us on the actual day itself, which was then too late to move anything, which we were able to predict when and if we had to make change, but it's quite a complex process because you're dependent on the weather itself.
I suppose, sorry, just to finish out, you're probably talking the Friday is, I suppose, the first day, Cal. The Wednesday is probably the second preference, and then the Sunday itself, I would think. I mean, if the forecast showing that, hey, Tuesday's a terrible day, you know, then you would move on to the Wednesday. If Thursday's, you know, a terrible day, then you'd move on to the Friday or Saturday, Friday or the Sunday. So the Sunday, to be fair, is the last resort. You know, and that was always our thinking. We have the road closing order on the Sunday morning from 9:30 to 1:30 on the Sunday, with it opening again prior to the churches. But as I say, it would be our last resort type of thing if we had to go down that road.
And Mervyn, just finally, just your pitch here today is really is it a safety thing, and I don't think nobody is going to argue with that. They're what price safety, but the bales and the fencing and stuff, and I've seen them on the ground and I've seen how useful they have been, and those aren't prohibitive in terms of costings.
No.
For the figure, can you give
I mean, you're probably talking the reason of 50,000, I would say, roughly. You know, that's sort of where we are. And bearing in mind that, you know, if there was an opportunity for further bales, then those bales could be used for safety at all our events. You know, at the Ulster, at the Bush, at Cookstown, at Tandragee, wherever. You know, Armoy. You know, there's no issues around that. You know, it's a burden every year, particularly around the fencing. You know, where we're paying out a serious amount of money on fencing.
Okay, David, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. Very welcome, and thanks for your presentation. It sounds like they're bringing the bills and the fencing. Take it away with you.
That was quite.
But yeah, one of the jewels in the events calendar, and a massive impact to the area, as Campbell said there, and obviously an excellent run event as well. Just looking at the outcomes we were hoping for in relation to the likes of permanent facilities and feeding into capital funding. How could that, playing devil's advocate then, how could that be justified in an event which would last a week? The other 51 weeks of the year with the construction of stands or... Is there any other work that goes on in the area that would benefit the area, or should it be shared with any other organisations?
Yeah, I mean, we have talked this over with council, just, you know, with Korean Council. And I suppose our thinking around that was facilities around the paddock area where you could maybe, you know, obstruct offices, you know, build offices type of thing, which we could use all year round. I mean, we hire offices at the present time, which are costing us £500 a month just to hire a couple of offices for the Northwest. That's what we pay in Korean on a monthly basis, you know. So if you had that facility there where, you know, you had offices and, you know, maybe further facilities there for the event itself, which could be used by other events in the area. You know, I mean, the North Coast has a number of other, you know, really good events which run throughout the year, you know, who again are paying for office space type of thing, you know. But if you were able to build that facility within the paddock, you know, that would be our sort of goal at the end of the day, you know, which would be a big step forward from our point of view.
Yeah, you know what the critics are like on those.
Exactly, I know. Yeah, I mean, appreciate that.
They put the case together well.
Yeah, I know. You know, we often thought if you could have built something there, you know, the likes of a sort of a Joy Dunlop Centre office building or something like that type of thing. You know, where you could look at that in the future, you know, and say, well, listen, you know, that's probably a wee bit down the road, but that was always our thinking around that.
Yeah, but it's good to get it started and get a bit of groundwork done on it.
Yeah.
Just looking at the new development group that you've spoken about as well, and they're meeting tomorrow, is it? I think?
Tomorrow,
you say, and you mentioned a couple of the participants. Could you widen that out a wee bit and tell us who else will be involved in the development group, really, this year?
Baby.
That group, I think, was initially meant to start last year. So it was taking what NITB do within Northern Ireland and within the Republic of Ireland, adding in Tourism Ireland, adding in Invest NI, to actually promote the event. I think a lot of the work we have done in many respects can be replicated for other events. I think there's a lot of common themes because we're not just marketing the Northwest 200, we market Northern Ireland. Every time an aerial photograph is taken from a helicopter, it's showing the North Coast, you know, the Causeway Coastal Route. There's a link in there with Wild Atlantic Way now through Tourism Ireland. So I think there's a lot of commonality where work we have done can be input into that group. There's we in some respects are glad to see more resource coming our way to help us market our event because we are of limited resource. So being able to focus the ideas that we have, the themes that we have, but then use NATB's platform, Tourism Ireland's platform, and bring in Invest NI.
So it's basically a tourism and marketing theme to the development?
That is our understanding at the minute, but we've had limited sort of preview of how that group is going to work, and tomorrow is the very, very first meeting.
Who drives that? Is it just look at the flow chart there? It obviously feeds into yourself, Jared. Are you sort of driving that end of it, or are you?
The first, well, Mervyn and I actually had a discussion about this last week when we saw the agenda come out, because NATB are in the chair. Now, ordinarily, with anything that we do, we would be driving it. We would be in the chair, but if it's safety, if it's marketing, if it's sponsorship. We would drive that, but I think we need to go to that first meeting, see how it goes. There's clearly common themes across all events. I think, and this is only a personal point of view. I think there's maybe a gap because a lot of events are maybe working independently of one another, but there are very common goals and very common aims that I think those events could be achieving. There may be an efficiency to be gained out of that. But for the overall tourism product, I think there's an advantage to be had by it.
Thank you. Okay, thanks very much, David. Right, Karen.
Oh, thanks very much, Vice Chair. Thanks for your presentation this morning. And I mean, the PR and the selling of the brand of the North West 200 is something else in my eyes. To hear that your social media campaign has multiplied numerous times is very, very good. And I suppose I was going to touch on what Mr. Hilditch had already raised, and about likes the photographs and how that can go round to thousands and thousands of people with a flick of a button. And she said that even if an aerial photograph from the helicopter, it's all very positive. But you're here to talk about getting a few pound and how you're going to spend it, and it'll be based around the health and safety. And I know a wee bit about health and safety, but not an awful lot about health and safety around the motorbikes race. But you talked about the safety bails and about how you pay up to £40,000 a year on the rental. So I assume on the rental somebody comes in and wrecks them all around your 2.5 miles, or do your volunteers do that?
Our volunteers do that. I suppose it kicks off initially with a risk assessment. The risk assessment then decides, where we do in relation to the bails. We have a number of our own safety bails which have been purchased by ourselves and also by government over the years, which we store in Korean, and those bails themselves are used by our events. But we have guys who come in 2 months prior to the event and they start to build the course. Building the course takes roughly in the region of 6 weeks, 2 months, depending on the weather. Roughly that
and
time.
a week to dismantle.
And a week to dismantle, a week to dismantle. Because our aim always is, listen, to get it away. So we bring out, the resources to get it all away as quickly as we can. The last thing we want to do is cause a lot of inconvenience and to the residents. And Korean Council manage a lot of the litter picking for us and that end of things. So they've been really good to us on that. So we build the course. We store the bails themselves. The bails themselves are the last, I suppose, piece of equipment we put out, because you don't want safety bails blocking, avenues and entries in people's houses and things like that. So you leave those as lit so they don't go out to the weekend before. So we have roughly in the region of 350, 375 bails at the minute, which we put out, which we currently own. Okay. But we need further bails, and this year, for example, our bails then went out to our events, but they also went across to England. We provided 450 bails across to one of the Superbike events in England.
You hire them?
No, we provided them free of charge to them because they had given us ones in the past, but now there's our own permanent circuits, so we can't actually get them back in again, you see.
Okay. So if you were to purchase...
If we were to purchase more bails, we would store them. Yes.
You don't need anybody to come in and
no, we don't.
Your volunteers are already trained.
No, we can manage them ourselves. The manpower is all available there and can be managed. If we had the bails there to store, to give to our events, and we can manage all that from our base in Korean.
Okay. The event space that you talked about and how it can be related to different other events and the usage. Have you ever considered setting up an events forum?
An events forum? I suppose we've probably talked about it in the past, but we really haven't got into it too much because we've really sort of put all our efforts into the Northwest itself. We would work closely with some of the other events. You know, we provide parking space for the golf. We would help the Milk Cup. And we also help the raft race as well, give them some support, you know. And if they need anything from us, then we would provide it to them free of charge.
Okay,
we've done that.
Okay, just one other week. I mean, I need to ask what your engagement is with the local community to ensure that smooth passage, because you know, like Mr. Hoshin has already raised earlier, you know, when the bill was coming through for the flexible road closure, you know, there was letters of support that outnumbered letters of objection. So, and like, no matter what, how small or how big an event, you always can get one person that can, you know, well, I'm not going to say put a sting in it. Do you know what I mean? That and you always try to accommodate. And you know, I've heard you in your presentation say that you just go out and if anything's broken, you just get it fixed immediately. And I've no doubt that that good communication. But what else do you do? Because you know.
I suppose if you take back 3-4 weeks ago, we went around a lot of the traders in the area itself. We spent a day, in fact we spent 2 days going around all the traders, just to talk to the traders around the course, and we kick off sort of, you know, at the Maharaboy Hotel, we move into Port Rush and then we move into Port Stewart. We would then go around a lot of the residents on the course itself. In fact, I was out yesterday with one of the residents just having a chat about the Northwest who lives down in Dundoo and Crossroads. We would go out and talk to the residents. If a resident come back with a problem, then we would go out and see them. We had a resident around in the Mill Road roundabout area who was very, very anti on the Northwest itself, and we went out and spent a lot of time there. We went down, had a cup of coffee, we sat down and a chat. And what are the issues? Well, the issues are that, listen, I collect my kids at a particular period, my grants, kids at a particular period of time from the school in Port Stewart. And how can I get them? And I says, listen, that is fairly simple. You know, when do you want to collect them? At a particular time. I said, we'll manage that for you. And we've managed that now for 2 years. We do Meals on Wheels on the Thursday and the Saturday. We have a number of residents around the course who require Meals on Wheels, and we have one person who looks after that. And we bring in the meals themselves to the residents. There's 2 residents at Black Hill, and we bring in their food on the Saturday. And provide the Meals on Wheels, and then that car goes off the course again. So we do that. We visit all the schools. We have 2 schools in the course. We have one at Carnal Ridge and one after G Barn itself. And we spend a lot of time there. Is there anything we need to do with the kids? You know,
that's exam period as well, right?
It's exam times, and the university. I go and meet the university in January every year in Coleraine, because the university is a big provider of employment in the Coleraine area itself. And I go and meet the university and talk to the university around it. So.
Just one final question. That's very good. Thanks.
You know, that's the type of thing that we are doing at the end of the day.
Just one more. You spoke about the 85,000 visitors and 20% of them being overseas. But then you spoke about a survey that was carried out. It was only 150 surveyed, although there was a 98% response. Do you think the figure that was surveyed is enough?
Probably not. There's probably something we can look at.
Maybe I get the figure wrong.
We do our own internal research every year, but every 2 to 3 years a much larger piece of work is carried out. 2010 it was carried out by a company called TTC, Transport Tourism Consult, and there you're talking a major survey, economic impact study. So that survey would have been sampling 1,000. 2012 the work was carried out by Cogent and Albert Brown. That is conducted on behalf of NITB, who would select a number of events each year. Prior to that, work was done in 2004, 2005 by the ESRA. So there are major pieces of work, but to complement that, we each year carry out our own work, and we would work closely with Volunteer Now. But we do still use, the questionnaire would be the NITB standard template. So what we're getting is like for like data. But it means that we're getting an update continually ourselves, because it's important to understand what the visitors are saying, what they're thinking when they come to the event, plus the teams, participants.
Okay, thanks very much.
You might see me at it maybe next week.
There's always hope, isn't there?
Isn't there?
Basil,
thank you.
Pick it up from you, please.
Haven't even started yet.
Chair, if I could just say, there is another group.
Waiting to get in.
They're waiting for the room, so
Well, I tell you what, could I be first in the questioning for the next lot? Because I sit and wait to the end here patiently.
No, you're all right.
Right. So, Mervyn, first of all, some really positive stuff. But you must have the most stressful job in the world. I know the pressures, and actually when Cathal was talking there, I was up there for those 3 years, and I confess I'm the one that has not been back.
Brought the bad weather.
Well, I reckon it was a jinx, because I was up there and we had trailers tumbled and everything, but I mean, I know what the pressure was. I remember when the oil was down in the track and what we were going to do and run and all those sort of things. So it's just, it's almost unbelievable the pressure that you're under on race day. And I just want to say that I recognise it, and you have to go and make the big call, and you just be living on your nerves. It's fantastic. It does, however, lead on to this. The reason why there's so much stress is that, the whole issue about road racing and deaths on, like we do lose people, and it's very hard to manage that. I mean, what's your sort of thinking on that on an ongoing basis?
It's difficult. I mean, I've been through it on 4 occasions, from Robert and Upright through to Simon Andrews this year. It's not easy. It's probably fair to say that it can be really, really stressful. Particularly when you build up a relationship with them, and Simon Andrews was a case this year of 5 years ago. When I talked initially to Simon Andrews, and Simon was, well, I'm not sure whether I want to do the roads or not, and I remember to this day. And I said, Simon, listen, to be fair, with all due respect, if you want to do them, good. If you don't want to do them, there's no harm done, and that's the way we work with them. When I built up that relationship, I was 2 weeks ago there in Silverstone, sort of talking for next year, and also Macau now in a few weeks' time. But it's not easy. It's attending the funerals, and it's just sort of working with the family. And to be fair, his parents were absolutely brilliant this year, but it does. It's fair to say it does have an effect on you, and then you see things like the road film again there, which was on there, a couple of Monday nights ago, which definitely is sort of brings it home to you again, Basil. So it's not easy. It's not, as I say, I'm not so sure how. I've often said it, we'll see what happens in the future, but. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to go on, Mervyn, but I just want to say I absolutely see it and get it, and the trouble is you've so much expectation from people that are pushing you to run the race, and so just to say, I do think that's probably limiting a wee bit in long-term capital infrastructure spending, because people are worried about disaster back in, and but I do think that there's something about it. It is obviously very popular. There's you do a magnificent job. You sort of came and said to us that the only thing that you really wanted from us here was like safety bails. Is that it? I mean, is there not anything a bit more expansive?
There's a lot more I would like at the end of the day, to be fair, but we have never come on with a sort of, we've tried and work on our own 2 feet over the years or some type of thing, and any support and any help we've got, we've always been very appreciative of it. But certainly the safety bails and the fencing is, if we had that, it would be a big help from our side.
It's the issue of structure. It's the issue of structure. Like the fact that you're, the way that you're set up as a company or not a company and all of that, is that the real problem? Or
well, it's not really. I suppose we have a limited company for the North West to suffer for Corry District Motor Club, but I suppose it's allow us to, we just don't have the funding. We don't have the funding to go out and buy another 100 safety bails.
You should have, given the success of the thing. I want to ask you one other question, just because the chair smiles with that smiling assassin looking at me. I was quite struck by your answer to Karen McKevitt there about how you engage with people, because as you know, I have a lot of family up around Portstewart, Portrush, all of that. And it's amazing to me, because actually I do respect the fact that if you're not into road racing, it's like a huge inconvenience.
Exactly. Yeah.
So whilst it's all very well to say, well, 90,000 people think it's fantastic, if you're there and you're going, look, this is just the way. And I do think that you manage it really, really well. I'm not sure that I really understood the lengths that you went to actually engage with individuals. But I guess I should have worked out that something was going on. Otherwise, you wouldn't have got the extension and the days and all the rest of it. So there is something. I mean, is there any more to it other than you personally, or maybe it's both of you personally going right? I mean, how structurally engaged, that idea about going and lifting the fella's grandchildren or the Meals on Wheels, I mean, I had no idea. That's brilliant.
Well, we do that. I mean, we work closely with the schools. We bring over the school kids on the Friday. We have about 400 school kids in the hospitality marquee on the Friday, and that's from all the local schools. There's 3 schools in Portstewart and 3 in Portrush. So we built that relationship with them, you know, and it just, these things don't happen overnight. No. You know, as you know, and if somebody has an issue or a problem, then we go and talk to them around it. Just, you know, we go and see, okay, what can we do? You know, I mean, we've had residents at York Corner who wanted out between races type of thing, and one lady was a doctor who had to get to Korean Hospital type of thing. You know, okay, can you give us a rough estimation of what time you're required to go on and out? And she was able to give us sort of within half an hour. And we got the car out and across the road, just, you know, between races itself. But that all has to be managed and structured, you know, and it has to, you know, the right communication has to happen there to make sure that does happen.
But I just say, I'm making statements rather than questions here, just since I find it amazing, because I know the size of it, and I just know the people, and how you manage it is amazing. Amazing.
Thanks, Bartle.
Okay, Chair.
Okay, Leslie.
Thanks, I'll be quick.
Good
Just
man.
wondering about the Meals on Wheels, whether 2 wheels or 4 wheels.
There were 4 wheels.
The buildings versus temporary, I think, has got a lot of potential. I think you should look at that.
Yeah.
But what I would like to ask you just very quickly is, you did share with us part of the SWOT analysis, which I find very helpful. But you didn't include the weaknesses and threats.
Yeah.
Just wondering, is there anything in that you'd like to share with us?
I suppose when you look at the weaknesses or the threat side of things, I suppose it's the bad weather, but we now have flexibility to overcome that. The threat is of road racing and you know, and further fatalities, I suppose, and that's why we're looking at what we can do around the safety. You know, we spend a massive amount of time on risk assessments. You know, there probably are about a dozen upgrades from the 2014 risk assessment to what we did at the weekend. You know, and that risk assessment shows that, listen, after the incident we had with Simon Andrews, what can we now do at that particular occasion? What else is there? You know, you'll never ever make it 100%. It's motorbike racing at high speed, but all you can do is work and work and work, you know, to ensure that, hey, you put as much as you can into it. So you can't come back and at the end of the day and say, hey, listen, you know, you didn't do what you'd set out to do at the end of the day, you know. So there always is that threat at the end of the day around fatalities, but all we can do is work and work and work to make it as safe as we can.
Do you have any financial reserves? Do you have any financial reserves, for example?
None. No.
Would that be something you could consider?
But no, that's our problem. I mean, you know, we have good support from Stirling, from government, from the church, but we've no reserves. You know, we work on year to year. I mean, our accounts are there for anyone to see. So there's nothing there. You know, and that's why we're here requesting. You know, if anybody wants to see the accounts, they're available there. But we spend, this year's event costs us roughly slightly under £900,000. 900,000. It's a lot of money to try and bring in. You know, through sponsorship, through programme sales, through your paddock and things like that. So.
Thanks, Leslie. Okay, Marvin and Jared, thanks very much for your enthusiastic presentation. Thank you. I think we obviously commend the work you're doing, and I hope you've picked up that there's a lot of support within this committee for your whole event.
Sorry to run over our time there. Just.
You're all right. Just before you go, what are the dates for next year's event?
16th of May.
16th.
Saturday, race day 16th. So it kicks off from the 10th right through to the 16th.
Okay, well, I wish you well, and God willing, we hope the weather will be in your favour.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, members, I understand we're under pressure for time, but in relation to that presentation, is there any follow-up actions that you would suggest? Or? Leslie?
Only one thing, I didn't like to bring it up there. I was just saying that to William. They need to be told that we don't have money. You know?
Well,
we're doing a pitch for money here, really. Unless we're going to have a whip round. I was worried about that. I mean, Gordon may have suggested that.
I mean,
Like that one to us,
Leslie's obviously quite right, and I think on 2 occasions he asked the committee for money. But what I think we should do is, I think we should write to the department and take the guidance from the clerk. But I suppose a letter could also go to Detty, but that's probably outside our remit. But whether a letter is in breach of that remit or not, I don't know. But I suspect a letter should go to them both, because I took a note. It cost 900,000 for the event, but the putback, if I'm right, was £27 for every pound spent. So that's huge and needs support. It is also very good in terms of profiling Northern Ireland internationally,
absolutely,
and particularly the North Coast. And we talked last week about the Milk Cup, and that putback's even better than the Milk Cup. We were supporting the Milk Cup, so I would propose that we do that.
Chair, there's no issue in writing to both. Obviously, as members understand, the curious crossover and remit between DCAL and Detty with the movement of the events function. So there's no issue in writing to both ministers if members are content to do that.
We all agree. I think it's important. We have a major event here that's successful. That's good. And the other departments go out of their way to bring new events and spend large amounts of money to bring them. We've got to keep that in proportion. I think it's important an event like this gets an assurance of funding for the future. I think we should do all we can to lobby for that. So we all agreed that we write to both ministers, DCAL and Detty. Thanks very much. Thank you. Okay, takes it on to matters arising. In relation to the BBC, the members, I'm sure, are aware of the engagement we had with the BBC director a few weeks ago. The committee met with the DG to begin a dialogue, which was a kind of BBC development that we wanted here within Northern Ireland. So are we all agreed then that the clerk writes to the Lord Hall thanking him for the meeting in the committee?
This would be an initial letter, because obviously members will want to use a session to talk more at more length about how the committee wants to approach its input into the charter renewal and generally the strategic relationships that it was looking for the local BBC to build. This would simply be thanking Lord Hall, indicating that this is the beginning of a dialogue, restating the committee's commitment to ensuring that the BBC's public interest role is played to the full within Northern Ireland, and that Northern Ireland ensures it gets the best value out of the 3% quota in terms of licence fee per head. This would be an initial letter leading to further dialogue if members are content.
We all agreed?
Yep. Right. No difficulty agreeing with it, Chair, but could I ask, is the clerk aware of any feedback from the DG's meetings with the relevant ministers, the Detty Minister and our own Minister?
Chair, we haven't had any specifics back. I know the DG met a few other individuals as well, including the Chief Executive of NI Screen, and we're aware that was a very positive meeting, and again mirrors the dialogue that the committee is seeking to have with the BBC. We haven't had any specific feedback from either of those ministers. Chair, if the member wants to suggest anything.
But yeah, I do want to suggest that we try and find out what the feedback is.
Chair, if we write to both ministers.
Content we write, for an update. Thanks very much. Basil, you want to?
Yes, please, Chair. If I could just raise something that maybe we need to look at a different time, but it strikes me, just from what William was saying there about the Milk Cup, or what's it called now, the Dale Farm Cup. Both of these organisations do fantastic work, but they're at the limits of their financial and organisational capability. So we've got these big headline events that are doing things, but they're done almost on an amateur basis in terms of governance. And I just wonder that at some stage the committee it might be the sort of thing the committee would want to have a look at, about how we manage these flagship type projects that are run on a shoestring.
Yeah, on an annual basis.
It's not the same as having the Open coming to Royal Portrush, where they throw millions at it and it's all organised. This is a local thing, Coleraine Cycle Club really knocking its pan in to go and do things. And Did I get it right? Okay, right.
Motorcycle and motorcycle.
Motor club.
Totally motor club.
All right. Well, I'll even get the name right in the future. But I want to say, look, do you think it's an issue that there must be other things as well that we should look at this? This man's looking for £900,000, and they're doing it basically as a voluntary organisation, albeit there's a limited company.
Sir, just in respect to that, the Milk Cup and the Northwest 200 have a degree of security that other events don't have, in that they are funded to 2017, and there are other festivals and maybe not to the same extent in terms of numbers, but they have a security blanket there.
But Calvin, do you not think £900,000 is an awful lot of money to try and raise?
Appreciate your comments. I think maybe it'd been more suitable for any other business.
Okay.
You're all right.
Sure.
But I do take your point. It is a good one. It is. They do run on a shoestring. I rely a lot on volunteers. We see these major events that are brought in, and they're subsidised way over the top, to be perfectly frank. And you do wonder about the long-term return. But
just to say that the issue about the stress on Mervyn, you saw him personally affected there when it's just, who would do it?
No, he does a good job. Okay, we all agreed then that we write to the two ministers to get an update. The other issue there is I have to indicate to members that the annual report of the Arts Council NI and the Armagh Observatory and Planetarium have been laid in the business office, and members are welcome to look at during their own time. And the Controller and Auditor General has indicated that there are no issues with either. Members are content to note. Great, thank you. Correspondence. We've not received any.
Chair, there's no new correspondence from Thursday's meeting last week, so we can move on to chairperson's business.
And members, there's a tabled invitation for some organisation called Foram na Róg. I'm not very familiar with that language, but to reception to introduce the Irish medium youth sector. But I'm new to this committee, so I have to learn. And the reception's at 10:30 on Thursday, 13th November. It's one not to be missed. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Noted. Thank you. And 4 members of Peter May, the DCAL interim permanent secretary, was successful with his application to become the permanent secretary to DARD.
DRD.
Yeah, sorry, DRD. So he's the new permanent secretary at DRD.
He's the new permanent secretary at DRD, Chair. We don't know. We have no word yet as to who will come into DCAL. Members will remember that the role in DCAL is interim permanent secretary. We have no indication that will change, but we don't know who's coming in.
Right, I would agree. We forward the best wishes of the committee. Congratulating him on his appointment. Thank you. Forward work programme. Any
Chair,
comments?
there's nothing new on the forward work programme, other than if I cut to the next meeting. We're looking at that's the 6th of November. We're looking at organising a session just after the meeting. Sport NI are undertaking a consultation for their next corporate plan 2015 to 2020. We now have a process in terms of reference for that Malcolm's handing out now. We'll email that to members and we'll flag up this session. But essentially, what we want to do in that session is have members talk to the consultant. They have a DFP consultant coming in to look at scoping around this. And it'll be an opportunity for members to feed into that. We will provide more details of that in due course, but that will be a session we're looking to organise at the end of the committee's meeting on the 6th, which is the next committee meeting, obviously recess being next week.
Okay, members, all agreed with that way forward. Thank you all very much for your contribution. And just one thing, in any further arrangement would be appreciated that we don't have it on Tuesday mornings, because
Chair, this is
two of us are now on the DEDI committee, William and I, so there was a meeting today and there was a clash of dates, and I appreciate everybody's busy, but and it's not always possible to accommodate everybody, but if at all possible, just to note it. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you.